is, well, man, I'm a mess. I'm not taking care of you guys right now, but I got you. Don't worry. We're getting back on track. So, question one, page 225. I'll read it out again. Why not? Which type of easement gives an electric company the authority to install and maintain electric power lines? Ingress, also known as utility easements. Number two, the government may take property of an owner who died without heirs through a process called a cheat. Sounds like you're getting cheated by the state. Number three, for a deed to be valid, a competent what? Yes, correct answer is B as in Bravo. Grantor and two witnesses must sign the instrument. Does the grantee, the person receiving, have to be competent or even sign the deed? No, and that's why you can even give property to your what? Kids. And in some rare cases, yeah, you got it. For the type or form of deed most commonly used to clear clouds on title of real property is the D as in Delta quit claim deed. To quit various types of claims, not just claim of title, ownership rights, but like that pool that you had constructed in your backyard. You didn't pay the remaining balance. They put a what against your property? A lien. A lien is a claim for a debt that's owed. You want to quit that claim. You want to quit that lien. You can get them to sign the quit claim deed. Number five, if the sale contract does not specify the type of deed to be delivered, the seller is required to provide general warranty. A is in alpha. Six, the process of taking property under the power of eminent domain is C, condemnation. Think of them condemning your property. This will help you remember. Seven, the type of deed in which the grantor does not warranty the title in any manner except against the grantor's acts or the representatives is it's B, the special. Protects you against present defects only, while the grantor had ownership, interest, title in the property. Doesn't provide you protection against previous owners. And there's only one type of deed that has further assurance, future protection, and that is the general warranty deed. Number eight, the covenant against encumbrances in a deed is designed to guarantee that the A, grantor has not jeopardized the title, encumbered the property in any manner, except as noted on the deed. Nine, in answering questions pertaining to quality of title, real estate licensees are? Correct answer, yes. Longest answer is B. Required to advise prospective buyers to have a lawyer render an opinion or obtain title insurance. And there's two policies of title insurance. We'll talk about that in just a moment. The season clause, that's how you pronounce it, like the four seasons in a deed, specifies what? It is D as in Delta, longest answer. Grantor actually owns a property, therefore has the right to sell it or convey title. Convey means to transfer. Number 11, the provision in a deed that names the parties and contains the granting clause is the A, premises section. Good job. Located at the top of the deed. 12, a developer states that homes in a specified development cannot be less than 1,800 square feet. This is an example of what? Yes, subdivision restrictive covenants. Rules that limit all homeowners within a community, not just one specific property like a deed restriction. 13, an example of an encumbrance on title to real property does not include D as in Delta, premises clause in a deed. 14, the lender's title insurance policy is issued for. It is C as in Charlie, loan balance and is transferable. And that differs from the owner's policy, which is not transferable unless you keep it within your family. If you pass away, your legal heirs can inherit that property along with the policy attached to it. Which lien is first in priority? Yes, A is an alpha. Number one superior lien is a property tax lien. 16 is math. Take out your calculator. You could even take out your handout as reference if that will help you out, whatever notes you have. A business has a 5-year variable lease for a suite and office park. The first year of the lease calls for rent of $21.50 a square foot based on an index of 189. The index increases to 195 at the beginning of the second year. What's the adjusted or new rental rate? So we can take out that handout, percentage variable lease. If I can find it. There we go. Specifically, this is a variable lease. They tell us within the question, and it's a two-step process to solving. Step number one, you take the new index, which is what? 195, and you simply divide it by the original, which is what? 189. And if you plug that into your calculator, I'll work on this with you guys. Take 195, hit that division symbol, hit 189, and you should get 1.0317 continues on. Leave that in your calculator because we're going to need it for step number 2, which is to take that rate in our calculator and multiply it by the what? Original rent, which is $21.50. And if you do that math, the number that's already in our calculator multiplied by 1.5, and we get our new or adjusted rental rate. Now you can round to the nearest cent. Since we're talking about money, $22.18. Does that reflect one of our answers? Correct answer, yes. It's okay. Here's the thing. This is my philosophy. All the exam cares about is A, B, C, or D. If you can consistently, okay, not just by chance you got the correct answer this time, if you are able to duplicate that success for the math with the methods that you remember from school, I'm not going to take that away from you. I'm not going to try to reteach you math in a different way because we all grew up in different places. And depending on our math teacher, even, we might have learned math differently from people that went to even other schools. So I had a really hard-ass math teacher. He was a hard ass, okay? And he did everything by the book. If you didn't do it his way, and it's whoever made that textbook and the way that they teach math. But I was, not to brag or anything, but I was really good in math at a young age. And I found different ways of solving the same problems on my own, shortcuts in fewer steps. And I tried to reveal this to him. He said, you don't have to prove anything to me. Just do it my way and show your work so I can see you're doing it my way. Otherwise, I'm going to fail you. Really condescending, like, okay, you're not going to show me up in front of the class. And I loved math. And he really discouraged me from excelling in math. You're supposed to, as a teacher, you're supposed to fan the flame, right? For the kids that excel, you say, hey, let me show you something. What do you think about this? Okay, this person should be in an advanced class. But that was not this teacher. Okay, he was old as dust, did everything by the book. If you didn't do it his way, he's going to fail you. So I was really defiant against authority at that age. And I did all the math in my head, and I just wrote the answer down, and I turned in the test, and we were doing like algebra at the time. And this was like middle school. And he asked to see me after class. And then I saw him after class. He had 100% with a question mark next to it. And then he said, can you explain yourself? And I said, it looks like I got 100%. He said, you didn't show any of your work. How do I know you're not what? Flipping cheating. It was just a slap in the face at that point. At that point in the class, I've proven to him I know the stuff, right? I'm like, I'm doing really well in the class. And he thought I was cheating. It was just, anyhow, I'm not Mr. Lilick. Shouldn't have said his name. I'm not that type of teacher. If you're comfortable with the methods that you learn in school to be applied to these, and it's basic math, by the way. What we're going to learn is not trig. It's not calculus. We're not sending people to the moon. This is real estate math, guys. Practical math. That's why the calculator that you're allowed to bring with you to take your exam has basic functionality. We're just talking about multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. That's it. You're not using cosines, tangents, and all this flipping stuff. It's not that type of math. It's very simple math. Just follow these steps, though, and you can consistently get the correct answer. Is that all right? All right, we'll talk a little bit more about math later on. I know you guys, feels like I'm beating a dead horse here, but let's move on to number 17. A married couple signed a contract to purchase a home in a residential subdivision. When the couple had the lot surveyed before closing, they discovered that the contractor had built the neighbor's garage 3 inches inside the west boundary of their lot. The garage in its present location is an example of an encroachment. However, if that exists for how many years, the garage?
20 years.
If it exists for 7 years, an encroachment, unauthorized use of somebody's property, just like squatters is unauthorized use of somebody's property. It's no longer an encroachment. It turns into an implied easement, which is that one of our choices? Yeah, they threw that in there to try to deter us, confuse us. 18, when a pathway to a property has been used continuously and without interruption for more than 20 years, this is what you might have been thinking of. It creates a easement by prescription, D as in Delta. But that's if it starts off as authorized use. You allow it for 20 years. Encroachment, which is the previous question, is unauthorized. 19, soon after a man's death, at least they're consistent in the book, who they kill off. Deed was discovered in his death. The deed is for the man's home. It was deeded to a charity. The man is survived by his son who discovered the deed. The man died intestate. Based on this information, the house belongs to? It is C, for a couple of reasons. We know that just because you make a deed valid, sign it competently in front of 2 adult witnesses, a valid deed has to be delivered to the grantee. In this case, would have been the charity and accepted by them. This is what makes it a voluntary form of alienation, separation of you from property. That didn't occur. And you can't complete voluntary delivery and acceptance after you pass away. So the son discovers the deed. That means it was never delivered. And based on this information, he died intestate, which means with or without a will. Without a will. So the son, his lineal descendant, gets the property. Stick with your gut, because usually your first instinct is your best. And that's one of the strategies I want you guys to remember as well. 20, a retail business rents a space in the mall. The lease calls for rent of $2,000 a month plus 5% of annual gross sales in excess of $400,000. If the annual gross sales are $550,000, what's the total annual rent for that business? We could take out our handouts once again for calculation, in this case, of a percentage lease. That's what they're describing. And step number 1 is to calculate the base rent. They tell us in the question, it's how much? $2,000. And for the year, what do you have to do to get from monthly to annual? Multiply by 12, and yes, you get 24,000. Easy math. We're going to need that for step number 3, but let's focus on step number 2. I'll copy and paste it, and you'll notice I color coordinated for you guys. You're welcome. Step number 2, calculate the percentage charged on your gross sales. Well, what were your sales for the year? Yes, 550,000. They tell us in the question. But they said if you sell anything over how much? That's the threshold. Did you sell more? Yes, you did. The difference is 150,000 more. You sold $150,000 more in the year. And they said, we want a percentage of that. What percent did they say they're going to take? 5%. So all you have to do is take 150,000 and multiply by 0.05, 5%, same difference, and you get the additional rent that's owed for your sales in the year received by doing business on that property. And you add those two figures together, and yes, you get your correct answer, which is 31,500. Is that one of our choices? Correct answer for that reason, yes, is D as in Delta. Any questions? All right, how'd you guys feel about those questions? For unit 9? Okay, now let's move on.
They would have said after 7 years when I have been
After 7 years for what?
They would have in the question been like after 7 years.
Which question?
It's the encroachment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, after 7 years.
That I was confused.
Yeah, if they didn't say anything about that garage built in 3 inches inside the west boundary of their lot, then yeah, the person who owns that garage can fight to keep it there because it's existed for 7 years. And really, they can't do anything about it. The true property owner. Let's move on to unit 10 questions, all about legal descriptions, real properties described and located using legal descriptions. And there were 3 methods that we learned about in this unit. Meets and bounds, government survey system, and then lot and block as well. We're going to start with question number 1. And number one is testing us on how many acres you own based on a legal description. And remember, all we need to figure it out is this information right here. That's it. Actually, we don't even need the directions, northwest, northeast, southwest. All we need are the fractions, because we know that this description of your property is contained within a section, right? Doesn't matter what section we're in. The point is it's located within a section. And a section is 1 square mile, or how many acres? Yep. So that's the measurement conversion you have to remember. 1 section equals 1 square mile, which equals 640 acres. Okay? So that's the measurement conversion. So all you had to do is put what number in your calculator? 640, because this is saying you own a quarter of a quarter of a quarter of a section, or 640 acres. All you had to do is put 640 in your calculator, divide by 4 how many times? 3 times. Divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. Hit that equal sign, and you get how many? 10 acres. You can check in your calculator, very simple. 640 divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. Hit that equal sign, 10 acres. It's that simple. Any questions here? So for that reason, it's C as in Charlie. All right, number 2. What'd you guys get as your answer? It is D, but let's see if it's accurate. They're saying which of the following descriptions contains 120 acres. Let's see if this is accurate based on what you selected. It says the southwest quarter of the southern half and the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter. First of all, how many properties do we see here? How do we know? And I want you to think of the word and as a what symbol? As a plus, an addition symbol. So there's 2 separate properties, which means you're going to do 2 separate calculations. What number do you place in your calculator first? 640. And what do we do here? We divide by 4, then we divide by what? Exactly, divide by the denominators. And that's going to give you 80. All right, now 640 in your calculator again. For the next property, we divide by 4 2 times. And you get what? 40. So is it accurate? 80 plus 40 is 120 acres. It is accurate. It's the correct answer. It's D as in Delta. All right, number 3, what'd you get? Yes. 4. C as in Charlie. 5, the answer is in the question. 3 township tiers south. That's T3S. There's only one answer that has T3S. It's B as in Bravo. B as in Bravo. 6, a check measures 24 miles on each side. C as in Charlie. A box created by intersecting range lines and township tier lines is a township. 6 miles on each side, which is how many square miles? 6 by 6 is what? And each one of those square miles is called a what? We just reviewed it. A section. So townships contain how many sections? 36 sections, yep. All right, number 8, a vertical strip of land 6 miles wide, beginning at the principal meridian and extending 6 miles east, perpendicular to the principal meridian is called, you have to draw it out. That's the only way to answer this. Don't try to do it in your head. So imagine this dot is Tallahassee, which means the vertical line going through Tallahassee is called the what? Do you remember? Prime or principal meridian. And they said starting at this line and going 6 miles east, where do you end up? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You end up at that first vertical line to the right or to the east of the principal meridian. We know range lines are 6 miles apart, so we use R to represent it's a range line. It's the first to the east, so it'd be R1E. Is there an answer that reflects that? It is an alpha, range 1 to the east. If they said go 12 miles Well, ranges are 6 miles apart, so they'd be talking about range 2 to the east. Said 18 miles, range 3 to the east, 24 miles. You get it. They're 6 miles apart. Number 8, if you start at tier 1 to the north, range 1 to the east, what's the township directly above that called? Well, look up here. Here's the logic. If you're already at the first box above the baseline, tier 1 to the north, what's the one directly above that called? Tier 2 to the north. And it would be letter C because the range has not changed. They didn't tell you go to the west or to the east. They said just one above. So the range is still the same. 10. Which statement is false? Yeah, correct answer is D. We just reviewed this, didn't we? 36 square miles, 36 sections like A and B, 6 miles on each side. Yep. All right, number 11 is B, STR. That's the sequence, section, township, range. The northern boundary of section 36, tier 1 to the south, range 1 to the west is located. The only way is to draw this one out. Don't try to do it in your head, guys. So this would be Tallahassee, this dot. And that means the vertical line going through Tallahassee is called the what? Prime. The horizontal line going through Tallahassee is called the what? Baseline. And it just so happens we're at the first box below the baseline. And we're at the first box to the west or to the left of the principal meridian. So I'm just recreating the township we're located in. And townships are how many miles on each side? I'm reviewing with you guys. 6 miles on each side. 6 miles on each side. So let's recreate those 36 square miles. Look like this. I'll try my best. Okay. So here we go. This is 6 by 6. You can count it if you wish, but each one of those 36 sections, they're numbered in a particular order. Where do you always start? With section number 1? And the upper right-hand corner, northeast corner with section number 1, and number in a what type of fashion? In a snake-like fashion. So you'd order each section in this way. And that means the last one would be 36. And what a coincidence. Just so happens we're on the northern boundary of section what? 36. So if you look at the visual, we would be located right here. Do you follow? Because we're at the first box below the baseline, that's T1S, and the first box to the west of the prime meridian, R1W. It's exactly what they're describing here in this question. We just recreated it. So out of the answers provided, which one is accurate? Well, it can't be A. Can't be A because it says 6 miles south of the prime meridian. Well, look up here. The prime meridian is a vertical line going from north to what? South. How do you find 6 miles south of a line that's vertical, north to south? There's no way to find this specific location. Don't assume you're starting at Tallahassee. We didn't mention that. So that answer's out. There's no way to find it. Same thing for number or letter B, 35 miles west of the baseline. Well, the baseline is going from west to what? East. How do you find 35 miles west of a line that's already west to east? You can't find it. It can't be C because C says 25 miles west of the prime meridian. Look up here. This is the prime meridian, vertical line going through Tallahassee. That means we're only within 1 mile. If we're located on the northern boundary of section 36 of this township, we're only 1 mile within the prime meridian. So it can't be that because 25 miles west, this would be 6 miles. This would be 12. I mean, it's off the page. 5 miles south of the baseline is accurate, and we'll see why. If you look up here, this is the baseline, and each one of these sections is 1 mile apart because they're 1 mile on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that accurate? So it's B as in or D as in Delta, excuse me. Alrighty. 13. What'd you guys get? It is D as in Delta. What about 14? B as in Bravo. Any questions? If you own a quarter of an entire section, you just take 640 divided by 4. If you have a quarter of an entire section, a section is 640 acres, take 640 divided by 4. That's how much he owned, but then he sold half. So then you take that, divide by 2. So gives you 80. 15. What'd you guys get? Correct answer is B as in Bravo. All right. Enough of that. Let's jump into our session for today because we're making good time. Unit 11. Do you think Unit 11 is an important unit? Real estate contracts. You think we need to know about real estate contracts as a real estate agent? Of course. It's imperative to your success. We're going to start on page 246 with some general knowledge when it comes to contracts on line 2. Nearly every business transaction is based on a what? Isn't that what a contract is, an agreement? And you'll see that defined on line 4. It's an agreement between 2 or more individuals to do or to not do certain things, supported by some sufficient consideration, legal consideration, legally competent parties are involved. We'll talk about this. We'll come back to it. Voluntary agreement. Nobody has a gun to your head. Key to every contract, look on line 7, is the what? Starts with a P. Promise. Once again, the promise to do or to not do certain things. Like in a real estate contract, the seller promises to transfer title and the buyer promises to pay the purchase price. Contract promises are enforceable by law provided the contract meets certain requirements. We're going to discuss what those requirements are in this unit. That's what this unit is all about, understanding those details. So let's begin with preparation of contracts. To draft the wording of legal documents, instruments for others is considered to be practicing what? Yeah, and unless you're also a lawyer, you can't prepare most legal documents such as, look, line 13, deeds, mortgages. We talked about promissory notes, right? Most other legal documentation. And if you try to prepare these documents, not only could you be disciplined, but you could lose your license regardless of whether or not you get compensated for doing so. So it's important for you guys to hear this. Unlicensed practice of law, 3rd-degree felony. We talked about that as well. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Real estate licensees may not draw up lease agreements. We saw this in a previous unit, Unit 7, if you can recall. However, you can fill in the blanks on residential lease agreements for a period that does not exceed what? That does not exceed 1 year. And has been pre-approved, look on line 20, by the Florida Supreme Court. Yeah. So a standard lease agreement for residential property must be used because it has certain conditions, requirements that must be contained within. You can't just draw up whatever you like and think it's legally enforceable. So that's what we're describing, and we saw that previously. We're seeing it again confirmed for us. So what about the contracts that you can prepare as a real estate licensee? That's in front of us. Starting on line 23, a listing agreement is an employment contract with the seller to list their property, look for a buyer. A buyer brokerage agreement, self-explanatory, an employment contract with the buyer to help them purchase, represent them. Sale and purchase agreement between seller and buyer for purchase and sale of real estate. And we'll come back to an option contract. I'll talk about this at the appropriate time. We'll return to this. But if you go to the next page, page 247, essential elements of a contract. And specifically, we're talking about contracts of any type. Write that down. Any type of contract. In order for the contract to be considered what starts with a V? Valid. We talked about a valid deed. Now let's talk about a valid contract. It has to have at least these 4 essentials. You're going to be tested on this, at least one of them, but you're probably going to see this on your state exam as well. So you got to know all of what's in front of us. The contract must consist of, look, I'm highlighting it. It's in parentheses. Competent what? Individuals of sound mind and of legal what? Of course. We know what that means. Something's offered within the agreement accepted by another party. Mutual assent, meeting of the minds. It has to be something legal you're doing within the contract, legal purpose. That's why drug dealers don't have contracts between one another. If something goes wrong in a drug deal, you don't take them to court. You understand? Handle it on the streets. And consideration. We come back to consideration again. What is consideration all about? We saw this previously. Go to page 248 because a deed outlines what form of consideration you use to exchange title, valuable or good. It's in front of us. Valuable means you exchange for cash or something measured in terms of money. That could be in a contract, the promise to do or to not do certain things. Was it in exchange for money? Or was it in exchange for good consideration? Keywords love and affection on line 8. So if you have a contract to give property to your child, what type of consideration do you think that's most likely out of, valuable or good? Good. That's my feeling. All right. Statute of frauds, you're going to be tested on this in 3 separate ways on your final, your class exam. So it's important, and most likely you'll see it on your state exam. What is this all about? We're adding one additional element specifically for, look, contracts, transferring, that's what conveying means, and interest, which means ownership rights in real property, and contracts that are not to be performed, completed within 1 year from the date of creation. It says the effective date, which is the date it was signed. It must be in writing and signed to be enforceable. That's what the statute of frauds requirement is all about. So what contracts are they referring to? Contracts transferring ownership rights, contracts that are not to be completed within 1 year. It's on the list. Let's go through it. Purchase and sale, option contracts, deeds and mortgage instruments, all contracts used to convey interest, ownership rights. But then we come across lease, listing, and buyer agreements for a term of longer than what? Must be, what's the statute of frauds requirement? Must be what? You highlighted this. Must be what on line 18? In writing and signed to be enforceable. If something goes wrong later on, be able to take it to court to enforce it in front of a judge. The judge would say, okay, well, based on the type of contract that it is, it has to be in writing and signed. Did that occur? Can you show me evidence of that? Here's your evidence, Your Honor. If it's not enforceable. If it's not in writing and signed, if it doesn't meet the statute of frauds requirement. So I'm not telling you that verbal contracts are illegal. It just means if you try to enforce a verbal contract in the court of law, a verbal real estate contract, like the first item we see here, purchase and sale agreement, the judge is thinking, well, it's all he say, what? Yeah, I want to see some agreed upon terms, something in writing that I can easily enforce. But if that doesn't exist, it's unenforceable. And we'll see that terminology pop up once again. We'll come back to this. Statute of limitations. Do you know what the statute of limitations is? Really? With all this Diddy stuff going on, you're not paying attention? Yeah, but when it comes to that type of RICO and all that, those types of crimes, there's no statute of limitations. So that's why people are coming out of the woodworks like 20, 30 years later and saying this person did this to me, and lawsuits. Yeah. But statute of limitations normally applies to contracts that are written and you have within how much time to enforce it in the court of law if something goes wrong. If it's verbal, Yeah. Any questions about this? If you go to the next page to help you remember what we just covered, page 249, think of the acronym colic. Those of you who have kids know what colic is. It's when a baby is irritable because it has gases, won't stop crying as a result, something to look forward to. I'm just kidding. Colic is the term we use to describe it. You might recognize these four in particular. Oops. Let me just do this, make it easier. These four in particular, to make a contract, what? I'm going to circle it real quick. Valid. And you can write that down next to it. Just to make a contract valid, must have those four essentials. But then we added one additional element to make the agreement enforceable. Do you remember that? And that's the statute of frauds requirement. Yep. You remember statute of frauds? Requires that real estate sale contracts, contracts transferring ownership rights, contracts not to be completed within 1 year of the date created must be in writing and signed to be enforceable. It's here again. It's just to help us remember. Now, let's move on. There is a list, terminology associated with contracts in general we should be familiar with, so we're speaking the same language. Let's go through it. A contract is valid if it contains all of the essentials: competent parties, offer and acceptance, legal purpose, consideration. It's void if it's missing one or more of those elements. Like if there's something illegal in the contract's void. Basically, the contract does not exist. Voidable is interesting. It means one of the parties within the agreement can get out if they choose. They do not have to perform. Enforceable means you can enforce it in the court of law. Unenforceable is the opposite. You cannot enforce in the court of law. Any questions about this? All right. Then we come across different sets of contracts. Formal versus informal. Go ahead and highlight this on that same page, page 250 at the bottom. Unilateral. We're going to come back to this. Okay. But go to the next page. You can highlight this as well. On line 22, executory contract. You need to know this for a class exam question. Lock that in. But let's focus on this chart here, figure 11.2. This is what I wanted to get to. Let's go through these. What I just skipped over is summarized for us on this chart. It's going to save us some time. So formal versus informal. A contract that's formal means it's in what? Yeah. So if it's informal, that means it's not in what? And there's other names for contracts that are not in writing, such as what? Verbal. Yep. Oral, parole, and parole is French. Yes. It means in words, if you translate it. Then we come across bilateral and unilateral contracts. You see this? What's the prefix of the word bilateral? It's bi, which means what? It means both. To help you remember, think of bicycle, okay? We say it quickly, we say bicycle, but really it's a bicycle, which requires the use of both wheels to operate. You might not be familiar with this, but I'm pretty sure you'd agree with me. And it's a contract where both parties are obligated to perform as a contract states. So then we come across a unilateral contract. What's the prefix? Yeah, unilateral. Exactly. So unilateral, uni, think of a unicycle, requires the use of one wheel to operate. It's just going to help you remember. And this is a contract where one party is what? Obligated, and add this to the end of it because it's important for you to hear. Let me stretch this out. While the other party may void. And that's why we also refer to unilateral contracts as being void bull. Yes. Let me repeat this. Unilateral contract is one where a contract where one individual has to perform, the other party can get out if they choose. That's why it's voidable by that party who doesn't have to perform. And you're probably wondering, what's some examples of this in our business? There's 3 examples you might be tested on. And let me share those examples with you. You should write these down. The first example is a brokerage incentive. So I'm your broker. I decide to add an incentive for the month for your sales performance. If you hit that amount in sales, I said I'm going to give you whatever bonus. How is this classified as a unilateral agreement? Who must perform, the associates or the broker? It's actually the broker that must perform. Exactly. So if you hit that sales volume that unlocks the bonus, I have to give you the bonus. But you don't have to hit that sales volume. You don't have to perform. It just means you won't get the what? You won't get the bonus. That's why it's unilateral. And this is one example. Here's another example. Conveying property to a minor. Are you allowed to convey property to a minor? Yeah, you can. So you can have an agreement to transfer property to a minor, but that contract is classified as unilateral. Who do you think must perform, as the contract states, the adult or the minor? The adult. And who can get out at any time does not have to perform? The minor. So that's the risk associated with doing so. But it's one example of a unilateral contract. And the third example, which I mentioned I would come back to, is a what? An option contract. I know that most of you have already heard what an option contract is. You probably just heard it in a different way, and I'll explain how most people are familiar with this. Have you heard of rent with the option to buy? Yes. Rent with the option to buy is an option agreement. It's an option contract. Have you heard of a lease option? Yeah. Or a lease to purchase? It's all the same thing. So why is this classified as a unilateral agreement? Well, at the end of the lease, you don't have to purchase. You could walk away. But if you decide you want to purchase as the tenant / potential buyer, prospective buyer, does the owner have to sell it to you based on the agreement? Yes. Of course, there's conditions that have to be met, but yes, that's why it's unilateral. Let's continue to the next set of contracts. If you want something to be included with purchase and sale of real property, you should always express or put it in words, put it in the agreement. However, even if you don't put certain agreed upon terms in the contract, it's not in writing, could one or both parties try to fight for something that is not necessarily in writing? Yeah, they could, but we would describe this as it being implied through action or conduct. Like when you go into a restaurant, you sit down, you order a meal, you don't sign a contract between you and the owner of the restaurant. It's implied at the end of your meal, upon your enjoyment, you pay your flipping bill. So if you try to dine and dash, you know what that is, right? Okay. Those are quick responses. And they could legally enforce or prosecute you for running on the bill, even though there's no contract. Same thing in real estate. So people could try to fight for things that are not necessarily in writing. They'd have to somehow prove it through conduct or actions, or maybe, I don't know, text message or email exchange. When a contract has not been completed, it's known as being what? I highlighted it. It's called executory. When a contract has been completed, it's known as being what? Executed. This term is also used to describe a contract that has been completely filled out and signed by both parties. Have you ever heard a real estate agent say, "Oh, we have a fully executed contract. We're good to go"? And they're all excited about it. Let's talk about contract negotiation. Next page, line 12. But actually, look at the end of line 13. I'm going to highlight this. In the normal sequence of forming a contract, one party begins by making a what? Yeah. The person giving the offer, look, I'll highlight it. Line 16 is the what? Offeror. And the person receiving the offer is the offer. Yes, I mentioned we're going to see a lot of ors and es. Here's another example of an or and an e. Or is giving, e is receiving. So the point of this section is to describe the various ways an offer is what? Look, I'm highlighting. Terminated in the negotiation process. And you'll be tested on at least one of these class exam question. Lock that in. We will talk about the counter offer. Okay, but let's actually move on to the next page and focus on this box, which summarizes what I'm skipping over. And these are the various ways an offer is terminated. Termination in real estate is not necessarily something negative. It means to end. So how do you end the offer in the negotiation process? Let's go through each one of these together. Think of the acronym WILDCARD will help you remember. Gotta love these acronyms. W stands for what? By the offeror. If I make an offer on your property and you don't respond to that offer before you have a chance to consider the offer, I can do what with it? Withdraw. That's one way an offer might be what? Terminated, ended in the negotiation process. Okay. Insanity is one way to terminate, but you have to somehow prove insanity. I must have been insane to offer you $1 million for your beat up, rundown house. Good luck trying to prove it. Lapse of time. The time is expired for the offer. That's going to be detailed in your contract. If you use a standard sale contract for purchase and sale of real estate, when you prepare that contract for the buyer that you're working with, that's going to be all the conditions, the price they're willing to pay, how much of a deposit they're willing to give once their offer is accepted, when they can close. All of that detail is on the purchase and sale agreement. And that's your offer. You submit that sale contract to the seller for consideration. If they like what they're seeing, they'll initial at the bottom of each page and sign at the end. Fully executed agreement. But you also put in that contract how long they have to consider your offer. So imagine you give them 24 hours. By the end of the next business day, you got to let me know if you're going to accept my offer, because I think my offer is very attractive. But I'm not going to give you a lot of time to think about it because I really want this property. Strong offer. And let's move forward. If nothing happens with the offer beyond the time period that you gave them, then the offer is terminated. Of course, death is one way to terminate. You can't force somebody to complete a contract from beyond the grave. Counter offer is what you're tested on for your final. And you're probably going to see this on your state exam as well. But let me give you an idea of what this means. Look up here real quick. You make an offer on my property. I don't like it. I submit a counter offer for something more attractive in my eyes. As soon as I submit the counter offer to you, what did I do to your previous offer? Terminated. It's no longer good. It doesn't exist. So what if I submit the counter offer to you? You're thinking this much for your property? I'm turned off. I don't want to buy your property anymore. Can I say, wait, no, I want to go back and sign that original offer you submitted. I want to reconsider it because I do think it's a fair offer. Can I do that? No. Because that offer no longer exists. The only way to move forward is for one or both or either party to submit an entirely new what? Offer. It could have the same exact terms, conditions, and so forth, but you'd have to go through the action. You can't just sign the old one. It doesn't exist anymore. This is the procedure you go through in our business. I'm just sharing with you some insight. Acceptance would terminate because now we're no longer negotiating. We agree to the terms and conditions. We have a fully executed agreement. Rejection, I don't have to accept. I could just say no. If you get a rejection for an offer you submitted on behalf of your buyer, I'm telling you real life, it's not in your textbook. You need to follow up and find out what's going on and figure out why they rejected. Why wouldn't you just submit a counter offer? Right? At least then we can still be in the game. But rejection takes us completely out of the game. It's usually one of two things. Either they accepted an offer from another buyer and they just didn't have the courtesy to let you know, or you insulted them with your offer. And I've insulted a lot of people in this business. It's just the nature of the game. You're going to work with buyers that say, hey, listen, just submit that amount. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. You're like, listen, I'm telling you right now, this is a crazy low ball offer. And you're going to provide all this professional advice and opinion. And sometimes they veto and say, hey, listen, just submit it. Let's see what happens. And then you get this rejection. Obvious, we know what's going on there. But you call them and say, hey, listen, I know it was a lowball offer, but at least submit us a counter offer because my buyer does like your property. They are interested in moving forward. They just want to somehow meet in the middle. Remember, you're neutral, impartial, middleman. You're a negotiator, facilitator. You got to make the deal happen for them. Yeah. What do you mean? Another offer, yeah, of course. I do it all the time. Yeah, it'd just be an entirely new offer. So, yeah, I do it all the time. And they just make your life difficult, especially for a property that a lot of people want. They're just like, hey, listen, we're not going to submit a call. He just doesn't, they don't want to be bothered. It seems like the listing agent, and they don't want to make more work for themselves. So they say, no, just submit a better offer. Submit your highest and best is how they describe it. And destruction of the property will terminate the offer. Imagine if you made an offer on a property, but it's wiped out by a hurricane. I think we get it. Now, go to page 254. We see termination of what? Let's go through each one of these. How to end a contract. The best way to end is your first bullet point. It starts with the letter P. It's what? Yeah, this means everybody got what they wanted. Buyer said they would buy, they bought it. Seller said they would sell, they sold it. We got paid our commission. We all walk away what? Happy. Everybody gets what they wanted. But there are different ways to end. Mutual rescission. It's not working out for either party. They both want to terminate. Impossibility of performance. We'll look up here. Destruction of the property or death of any party will terminate. Lapse of time. Lapse of time is the closing date. What happens if it exceeds the closing date and the buyer was not ready, willing, or able to purchase? Well, the contract is terminated. And maybe the buyer loses their what? Yes, their earnest money deposit. We'll talk about that because the next is what? Yeah, what's the worst way to terminate? Somebody breaks their promise. That's what breach is. It's the breaking of a promise. And if you remember from earlier, key to every contract is the promise to do or to not do certain things. So if you break that promise, it's called breach. How do you resolve it? It's right here. Here are the remedies. Here's the solutions in our business for breach of a contract, like contract for purchase and sale of real estate. But they're summarized for us on the next page, the shaded box. Highlight that shaded box. Let's go through them together. Let's go through these together. What you could do is you could sue. You could take legal action. Essentially, you're taking them to what? Look, court. And you're getting, look up here, you're getting a judge to require them to perform specific duties, obligations that are in writing, that they're bound to. I'll give you an example of this. What happens, and I've seen this before, actually on a number of occasions, especially now with what's going on in the market and the interest rates and how high they are. The seller listed the property. They sold it a lot quicker than they anticipated. They're thinking about becoming a buyer again in this market. And yeah, they pocketed some equity, but they're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to qualify all over again for a loan for the difference. at interest rates, what they are, I'm not going to be able to afford a house as nice as this as nice as a location as this house is. So they're thinking, okay, well, I don't want to sell my property anymore. I just don't want to move. I changed my mind. They get cold feet. The buyer, if they're really serious about purchasing that property, you have a contract between you and the seller that says the seller is going to sell it to you by a specific date. And if you are ready, willing, and able to purchase, the seller has to sell it to you. So you can take them to court and a judge would force them to sell it to you. That's called specific performance. Yes, I've seen this on a number of occasions. Yeah. It's an interesting situation where somebody's being forced to sell their house, but I've seen it occur because the buyer already invested so much into this decision and this process and relocated their kids to new schools, job opportunities, transferred all of this, moving expenses, arranged everything, ended their lease or whatever the case may be. So yeah, liquidated damages. Look up here. This is when the injured party tries to claim what specifically? Tries to claim the earnest money what? And that could resolve, that could be a remedy or a solution if somebody breaches. Oh, you broke your promise? I'll just keep the deposit. So this typically occurs when the buyer breaches because the buyer gave the deposit as a placeholder to let the seller know they're serious. Oh, you're not serious? I'm going to keep your deposit. That sort of thing. Rescission means the injured party just wants to what? Cancel, get out, go their separate way. So that could give them a way out if you breach, you broke your promise. And compensatory damages. Simply put, this is when the injured party tries to claim more than the deposit. So if you're tested on this for your exam, here's how you might be tested and here's how you should answer. Real quick, if the injured party claims the deposit and the deposit only, what are they claiming? Starts with an L. Liquidated damages. If the injured party, based on the details of that question you get, says they're trying to claim anything beyond the deposit, now we're talking about what type of damages? Compensatory. That's how you can easily figure it out for exam purposes. And last thing before we take a break here, because we're at break time, assignment and novation. What is assignment of contract? The name gives it away. Exactly. You're assigning your rights and duties under a contract to another party. But separately, look on line 25. All parties have to sign a separate legal document. It's called a novation agreement. And it allows the substitution of a new party for the original party. Kind of like what Darlene is doing, wholesaling. So she gets sellers to sign an assignable contract, and then you turn around and try to sell that contract, assign it to an investor who's willing to pay more money. Any questions here? All right, let's take a break. Be back at 6:15. Stretch out, grab a snack, do what you got to do. Be ready to rock and roll.
Hi, my name is Crystal Rivera, and I'm a realtor with Live Realty at Nona. I decided to be a real estate agent for my love of helping others, thinking about helping them with their first home, with their first apartment, with their first investment property. Flipping homes is what started me in the business. My husband is into flipping homes, so I went from nursing, which I'm still currently doing, but now going into real estate. Decided to use Cameron Academy because of my nursing schedule and how their schedule works well with my schedule. Did not expect to be prepared as I was. Michael was amazing. He prepared me in 2 weeks to take the test, literally 5 days after I completed the class. And 3 days after that, I was already signed with Live Realty. And here we are 5 weeks later, and I have my first listing. So definitely prepared me well for the real estate industry and just all that's to come. I'm excited, and I wish everybody luck.
Hey, my name's Jonathan Gibson. I am from Orlando, Florida. I had started my career in real estate based on wanting to. I started out my journey in real estate with Camera Academy because I read a lot of online reviews and there were exceptional reviews about Cameron. When I got here, I wasn't disappointed at all. I realized Michael was the best teacher and he helped me learn everything I needed to know about real estate. And he's a very good instructor. He's thorough. He tells everything. He's one of the better professors. He's good at explaining stuff, helping you get through this and making it easy for everything. And I wanted to do real estate because I read some books and I bought homes and I wanted to start renting out my property. And I know we had, based on my research online from Google and everything, I knew I had to do a school for Florida and do the 63-hour course. And I looked it up, came to Camera Academy. It's been the best thing ever. He's helped us with connections. He's brought in different realtors and brokers, plus find work after the academy. So if you're wanting to learn anything about real estate, I would definitely recommend Camera Academy.
Hi, my name is Tamara Fletcher, and I have experience in education. I've worked in education for over 17 years, but I always wanted to get into real estate. I wanted to get into real estate because I love a couple of things. I love people, I love making money, and I love being able to sell homes, or at least the potential of selling homes. I love real estate. That's what brought me to Cameron Academy. Cameron Academy has done so much for me. I have learned so much from Michael. The information that I've gained here has made me feel so prepared for the state exam as well as the exam at the end of the course. I can't go on enough about how enthusiastic Michael was during the whole process of learning and how that really made a difference in the way that I learn. Being able to be here in person and take the in-person classes is what has really made it all the difference in the world. Michael is a great instructor. I saw great reviews about him and his instruction here at Cameron Academy, and I am really happy to say that all of those positive reviews are true, 1,000%. It's made a world of difference for me, and if I could do it again, I would.
My name is Gabriel Minyarji. I've been in the restaurant industry for the past 25 years, now getting the residential investment opportunity. I found Cameron Academy to be very helpful in my new endeavor. Michael Cameron has been very, very helpful, knowledgeable, provided very new and efficient information to help me endeavor my career. I'm very, very pleased and satisfied that I found Cameron Academy and the knowledge that I gained from them and for all my future endeavors. I highly, highly, highly recommend them. I definitely give them a 5-star plus.
My name is Dennis Duen. I came to the Cameron Academy. My mentor, he also he told me go directly to Cameron Academy. They are very, very good. And that's how he got his license. And he advised me to go to that school. And when I came, so far, it was the best decision that I made. The instructor Michael was very, very good. He's very good and it would benefit me, very knowledgeable. So I want to say thank you to him. And I think I will pass, because of him, I will pass both school exam and the state exam. So it was the best decision that I made. Michael was very good and I want to say thank you to him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel Ramirez. I'm an electrician. I got into real estate to get into my own deals and to see if I can sell some real estate for commission on the sides. Cameron Academy taught me a lot of things. It taught me different things that I didn't know about real estate. It cleared up some misconceptions that I had. Michael was a great teacher. He taught me a lot about real estate that I didn't know, and it just opened my eyes a lot more and made me just very motivated to get into this. And I think anyone should go to Cameron Academy.
Mi nombre es Rolly Peralta y acabo de terminar las clases aquí en la Academia Cameron con el profesor Michael. He aprendido mucho y estoy muy agradecido con Michael por todo lo que me ha enseñado. Yo quiero ser un real estate agent para seguir invirtiendo en el futuro y también ayudar a algunas familias a a adquirir sus sueños. Estoy muy agradecido con Michael y invito a todas las personas a venir a esta academia.
大家好，我叫 Rudy 我很开心能够跟 Michael 上学，因为他在real estate 这方面学到了给我很多知识，我也很开心能够选到他，因为不是每个人都可以教你，他能够教你的东西，他有很多的实力，有很多的经验，而且很风趣，所以对于我来讲是一件非常幸运的事情。那我个人想做房地产投资，所以我必须要有最专业的知识去帮助我自己。很幸运的能够选到 Michael， 所以我希望大家以后能够给他一个机会去跟他做投资，不会让你丢钱，这个很重要。所以祝你们好运，希望能以后见到你们，谢谢，拜拜。
Okay, cameras on. Let's continue. We're still in unit 11. We're going to begin page 256. Here we go. Page 256, we see contracts important to real estate. Of course, the most important contract is a listing agreement. This is an employment contract with the seller to list their property. Look for a prospective buyer. I think we understand that concept. Any questions about that? All right. I want us to look specifically on line 16, 17. It says chapter 475 of the Florida statutes requires written listing agreements to include the following information. Most of this is self-explanatory, but look at the first item. It says must have a definite what? Expiration date, which means, and I saw this on my state exam, you cannot have, says the listing may not include, look on line 26, an automatic what? Yeah, otherwise you could be disciplined by the beeper, issued a $200 citation. Can't do this. If the listing agreement has ended, or it's coming to an end, you must renegotiate and get them to sign an entirely new listing contract with you or to sign an extension. Otherwise, no, can't have an automatic renewal. Let's continue on to the bottom of this page. We see various types of listings. The first one starts with an O. It's called what? Yeah, most people, most sellers don't know that these listings exist, that there's options when listing your property. But open listing is not really favorable to us. You're probably not going to like it from a real estate licensee's perspective because it's open to any agency. Whoever finds a buyer first earns the what? The commission. So we don't want to leave the door open for another real estate licensee to take our commissions from us. We want what type of representation on the next page? Yes, and we see the first type of exclusive agreement. It's called exclusive agency. Why is this different from the next one we're going to describe? Well, yes, you have exclusive representation. Your brokerage is the only one who can look for a buyer. But the seller, look on line 5, reserves the right to sell the property without having to pay a what? A commission. So that means if the seller finds a buyer before you, do they owe you a commission? No. So it still, once again, leaves the door open for the possibility that you don't earn commission off the deal. But I've used this on a couple of circumstances where somebody refused to sign an exclusive agreement with me. He said, no, we just don't sign exclusive agreements. I'm not going to do it. You can advertise my property and bring a buyer to me, but I'm not going to sign an agreement with you. And I proposed this. Okay, I said, hey, listen, our company, all we do is exclusive agreements because we're going to do our job, and we do our job very well. We're going to make sure we find a buyer for you. We're going to market it in the correct way. You have to give us that, at least that opportunity. But I'll give you the option to advertise it yourself. And if you can find a buyer before me, you don't have to pay me a commission. So I put them to a challenge, and it's essentially giving this illusion of control, and they'll accept it. They'll accept the challenge, and I can almost guarantee you're going to find a buyer before them. It's just you have more tools that you can utilize to look for a buyer. You're going to blast it across the internet, put it in the MLS and so forth. They don't have that access. They're going to put a for sale sign in the front yard, maybe post it on their social media, but how far is that really going to go? You know? So it's a good tool to use if you come across a stubborn seller that doesn't want to sign an exclusive agreement. But most brokerages and veteran real estate agents will tell you, use the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. It means no matter who finds a buyer, look on line 19, the broker is assured of a what? Commission. So no matter who does the work, if a buyer is produced as a result of this agreement, you're going to earn a commission during the term of this agreement. Well, I'll just say this. So the question is from Darlene, is it fair for them to have to pay you something if the seller found maybe it was their cousin and they're moving down, right? And they're a serious buyer and they want to purchase that seller's house. So you don't actually produce this buyer with your efforts as a real estate professional. Is it fair for them to still owe you a commission? But I would debate that yes, it is fair, because your job does not end when a buyer is found. You still have to prepare the agreements. You still have to coordinate with the title company, the lender, and coordinate the deal until you can actually close. And a million things go wrong in a real estate transaction. So I would debate, yes, it would be fair. Now, if your heart is not in it because you feel like, man, they really did find a buyer, it's up to you. You can renegotiate your agreement in the terms of how much compensation you actually make. If you feel like, okay, I'm going to take, half a point off or something like that, that's up to you. But I digress. The last type of listing we encounter is probably one that you should stay away from. It's called the net listing. So how does a net listing work? Let me describe it to you. If I can simplify it, it's where you negotiate with the seller to list their property for a certain amount. Or maybe they come to you and say, hey, listen, I need to sell my property for at least X amount of dollars. If you could sell it by this date for X amount of dollars, whatever you sell it for over that amount, you can keep as commission, as an additional compensation, a bonus essentially, on top of whatever percentage you're making. Sounds like a great deal for the real estate licensee, but it leaves too much room for unethical behavior on the licensee's part if you think about it. What if you're getting offers that are not what you think the maximum offer would be? Maybe you're thinking, I need to hold out because I think this property can sell for X amount more. And if it does sell for that amount, I'll make X amount as a bonus. So you might be reluctant on presenting that offer, but we know that's illegal. That's a violation of your duties as a real estate licensee. What's your obligation? Present all offers, counter offers in a timely manner, explaining the details of each to the seller. And you know, as well as I, sellers might have different motivations as to who they want to sell the property for and how much they want to sell the property for. So I don't like it for that reason. And in addition to that, even if they agree to it and it was their idea to use this type of arrangement, the amount of compensation you make off the transaction is not hidden. It's on the closing documents. They see how much commission they're paying you. So if they see that you made an additional $25,000 as a bonus, they're thinking, damn, why did I agree to this? I'll take that. I can spend that money and it's my property. That money should be mine. But the agent, they knew what they were doing, and they're going to start thinking, and they're not going to refer you any business. Let's just say that. It's just going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. It doesn't lead to a good reputation. Stay away from it, in my opinion. And it's illegal in most states. Look, net listings are legal in Florida because Florida doesn't care. But in most states, they're illegal for the reasons we talked about. Now, you don't have to know this math here. It's good to know it in the future when you become a real estate agent, because with this math, you can do your math backwards to figure out how much you should list it for. If they tell you, hey, listen, I need to sell it for X amount of dollars, then you can use this formula to figure out how much you should list it for so they net a certain amount. Oh, I need to make at least $50,000 as profit equity in the property. Okay, well, how much do you owe? Okay, what is the property worth? You know, this is how you would do the math. Let's continue on. Let's actually go towards the bottom of the next page, line 30. We see brokers what? Yeah. It says the broker's compensation is specified in the agreement. Of course, we know that. The compensation is a form of a fee or a commission. Usually it's a percentage on the price. But look on line 34. The amount of commission to be paid is always what? It's always negotiable. We've been preaching that, haven't we? It's confirmed again. Can you get paid before you complete the deal? Before the closing? It is possible that you can arrange with the owner of the property that your job is only to find a what? And once you find a buyer that's ready, willing, able, they sign a sale contract. At that point, you've completed your task and you earn whatever compensation you agreed to. Doesn't even have to go through closing. Maybe that's like a marketing arrangement, for instance. You're paying me to market it for you. We can do that as a real estate licensee. It's not common, but we can do it. Typically, when you get paid your commission is in the effect of a what? Meaning it has to close before you earn your commission. And if I can ask you real quick, when do you think you get paid your commission? When the deal closes or a certain time period afterwards? What's your understanding of how it works? You get paid your closing on the closing date. So usually it's in the form of a check, but I'm going to tell you, you can have the money wired over to you. Usually the title company or attorney can arrange that. And whose money is it really? The total commission. Well, I'm going to explain. Whose money is that really? It's the brokerage's money. And their agreement is to split with you, depending on your employment contract, right? But you can give, as a broker, I'm telling you from my perspective, I can give specific written instructions to the title company. Hey, make sure you have the 80% of the commission ready for the sales associate on the closing date so they can just pick it up and they'll cut separate checks. If you don't specify that, then they'll just send you the total commission as a broker, and then it's your job to give your associate their split, whatever you agree to. Yes.
Somebody wants you to sell their house and they only want to give you like a 5% commission, but your broker has a rule with their company that you have to do 6% every time. Is that ever?
Not to that extreme, but brokerages, they do require sometimes a fee. You have to pay at least a $300, $400, $500 transaction fee. And then what agents do is they don't want to pay that transaction fee. They want to keep all the commission in their pocket. So they transfer that fee onto the client that they're working with. I don't like that business. Imagine they're working with a seller, for instance, and they say, hey, our brokerage charges a transaction fee. So yeah, I'm going to charge you 3%, but also you pay this $400 transaction fee. I mean, come on, it's just a little bit tacky. You're just nickel and diming them at that point. The transaction fee should be included in the total commission you're going to make anyway. Just subtract it. But anyhow, there is no industry standard or anything. The amount of commission to be paid is always what? And Florida does not limit how much you charge. That's all I'm going to say about that. Look, broker earns a commission, then splits with potentially a cooperating broker, but the rules have changed with that. Now, the agent or the brokerage that's working with the buyer has to get their commission from the buyer. You'll see that detail. Check this out. It says you cannot pay directly to the seller or the buyer or other brokers. And then we see 100% commission plan. Have you ever heard of a brokerage company that's giving their agents 100% commission? You ever hear of this before? Exactly. Like, this is what most people think. Like, how are they staying in business if they're giving all their agents 100% commission? It's because they try to hire as many as they can. It's a numbers game for them, because when you hang your license with them, they're going to charge you a monthly, like a subscription to hang your license with them. They're going to charge you, I don't know, maybe $200-$300 a month to keep your license active with them. And they're going to charge you a transaction fee for every deal that you get done. So they disguise it as a technology fee or an office fee or an active license fee, whatever they want to call it. But they can structure their business the way they want. Maybe. Depends on how many agents you have. Go to page 2. I mean, in the subscription model, it's as many members as you can get, right? So with the subscription model in real estate, it's as many agents as you can get them to hang their license with your brokerage company. Doesn't matter if they don't do any deals, you get paid every month. Especially for a new agent, it's not really favorable, because in the beginning, you want to learn. And you're not thinking about selling right away. If it happens, you're doing the actions to work towards it, but you want to learn and absorb it as much as possible. Imagine it takes you the first 6 months to really get a grasp of the whole industry and so forth, and you pay 6 months worth of this subscription fee. a few $1,000s. And then when you actually get a deal done, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm barely making anything off of this because I paid all this money to the brokerage company. If they're giving you leads, maybe, but not all brokerage companies, most brokerage companies do not. All right. As I mentioned to you, if you want your share of commission to be ready for you on the closing table, the broker has to give the closing agent authorization. Provided the broker gives the closing agent authorized and instructions regarding the amount of commission that the associate is to be paid. Anyhow, let's continue on. Check this out on line 16. You might be entitled to commission even though your agreement has ended. So imagine you list a property, you are unable to find a buyer, and the contract expires, and the seller is not willing to renew with you. They don't want to sign an extension to allow you to continue listing their property. Are you with me? You understand the concept or the hypothetical? If you can prove that one of the buyers that you procured came back and bought that property, you might be entitled to a commission. As an example, your listing agreement has ended, but the neighbor that came to one of your open houses came back and they say, hey, what are you still doing here? I thought you sold your property. Imagine their neighbors just chopping it up with each other. Oh yeah, we didn't end up selling it yet. We're probably gonna maybe relist it. Oh, well, I'm actually interested in buying. I'm renting up the street, and I wasn't ready at the time, but I'm ready now. They say, oh, great. Well, I don't have an agent, so we could just deal directly with one another. Not so quick. If you can prove that they came into one of your open houses, you procured that buyer some way, shape, or form, you could be entitled to that commission. And then I get the question all the time, how can you figure that out? How do you find out? Well, it's kind of like when you break up with somebody and you're still friends of friends on social media, and everything's recorded in the public records is what I'm saying. You can find out if that property sold, who it sold to, and check your records if you want. I mean, if you're that much of a stalker. Let's continue on. What do I want to show you? Go to page 261. Check this out. You need to know this, but without even looking at this information, this is the type of information that appears on a typical sale contract. Without even looking at it, you could tell me probably everything that appears on a sale contract. The legal description, like the address, parcel ID, what we talked about on Friday, the names of the parties, the signatures, the dates, the purchase price. All of that is here. It's common sense. Go to the bottom of this page, line 31, you see spouse's signature. Didn't we talk about this in a previous unit? Can you sell the property from under your spouse's nose? Remember, even if their name is not on the deed, if the property has been what? Starts with a H. Homesteaded, claimed as a primary, you still have to get your spouse to sign off on it. You can't sell somebody's primary residence from under their nose, let alone your spouse. So we'll see details of that there. It just confirms. Unless you have a document, a legal document that allows you to handle legal matters on behalf of another person. We call it POA. What does POA stand for? Yes. It says written legal document. Assigning somebody as the attorney and what? Do they have to be a lawyer, this person that you're allowing to handle legal matters on your behalf? No. Attorney just means a form of representation. They're representing you when it comes to legal matters. It could be anybody. There's two types of power of attorney documents. Go to page 262. The first one starts with a G. It's the what? And look up here. General allows the attorney, in fact, to handle what matters? All matters on behalf of that party. That's a scary thought. Giving somebody legal authority to basically be you for any legal matter. And that's what comes with the general power of attorney. The special is what is most often used to handle one specific act or matter on behalf of another party. What do you need to know? You have to have it acknowledged. You have to have this document acknowledged. What does it mean to have a document acknowledged? notarized. And for real estate transactions, if that's the legal thing you're doing, must be recorded into public what? Records. That's important to know. And you might come across this circumstance. You're dealing with a foreign buyer or seller that wants you to handle the transaction for them while they're out of the country. This legal document could be used. Let's continue on. We already talked about this in Unit 4, material defects disclosure, but look at the bottom of page 262. We see as is provision. Some people get confused with this. Even though you're selling the property as is, you're still required to disclose known defects. This is the rule. Some people get confused about that. Like, oh, I'm selling it as is. I don't have to tell them the problems. No, you still have to disclose material defects. But by selling it as is, you're basically saying, I'm not taking care of it. Here's the problems, but I'm selling it in this condition. This is how you're buying it. I'm not going to fix anything. That's what as is provision means. So be careful with that and advising your clients. Let's go to the next page. Have you heard of radon gas? Radon gas, look in the shaded box, is an odorless and tasteless, naturally occurring radioactive gas. It's light, it seeps through cracks and foundation, could end up in any room in the home. It's rare. It's rare. If it happens up north, it usually builds up in like a basement, but here in Florida, we don't really have basements, so it can end up in any room. And there's devices you can put in your home to test for it, but once again, it's not a common thing. And then when you're exposed to it in high concentration over a long time period, could cause very serious health risks. Radioactive gas, guys. Go to page 264. Lead-based paint. Have you heard of lead-based paint before? It's when you have paint with what in it? Lead. Now, why on earth were people painting houses with lead-based paint? It lasted longer. It was stronger. It adhered better to what you painted it on. But what they found out over time is that lead causes what? Yeah, lead poisoning. That's why they remove lead from pencils. They replace it with graphite because kids are, chewing on their pencils and getting lead poisoning. It travels the bloodstream, ends up in the brain, and causes very serious health risks, learning disabilities, and so forth. And there's a conspiracy behind this. I don't know if you've heard, I love a good conspiracy. I don't know about you guys, but, and this is very common for homes built prior to 19 what? Yes. So there's a separate disclosure that has to be given when you're selling homes built prior to 1978. This is when you're purchasing or renting these properties. Separate lead-based paint disclosure question. Same thing. If it was built prior to 1978. Now, here's the thing. When you remodel a property, I think over 90%, then you can get a new build date assigned to it. If that's the case, then it's going to have the new build date, and it's going to eliminate the requirement to provide this separate disclosure. But if you just remodel and you don't get the new build date, it's whatever the original construction date is, even though you gutted everything. So just something to consider. And it's not a big deal. It's not going to mess up your deal. It's just, hey, here's the hazards of lead-based paint. You understand the hazards? Sign off on it. There you go. Not saying that the property does have it or that you had it tested. You're not taking responsibility for any of that. You're just saying, here are the hazards. But it is required. So do you want to hear the conspiracy theory about why lead was removed from paint? Okay. So we know about like radio frequencies that exist all around us, and they're probably passing through your body right now, right? And there's a lot of people that think about these things and get very nervous about these things as to what it might cause. Radio frequencies, emissions from your cell phone and so forth. Does it cause learning disabilities? How does it affect our body? So, but because all of these frequencies exist, the government has ultimate surveillance over what goes on in our lives because these frequencies are floating around. They can tap into these frequencies. Even with your cell phone just sitting on your desk, they can map out the entire room just by analyzing a signal that comes off of it. They can basically create a 3D map. It's really interesting. So it is possible for them to have surveillance over you unless you have something to block those emissions, those outside emissions that come from all over the place, from 5G towers and so forth. Well, just like Superman cannot see through what? Lead. It's because lead, and you wear a vest when you go to X-ray machine, right? Or when you're doing X-rays, because it blocks the radioactiveness, and it blocks out a lot of those emissions. So the theory was, in our nuclear age, thinking about nuclear fallout and so forth, imagine if there's a bomb and there's radiation, lead-based paint, the lead will keep out the radiation. So they said, remove it because it's poisonous, which, I mean, it's an extremely rare case where somebody's eating paint. Okay? Kids and pets, yeah, there's some cases, but not, I mean, they stopped it. The theory is the reason why they stopped this is so they can have all that surveillance, that ultimate surveillance by, bombarding us with these frequencies and so forth. It's very interesting conspiracy theory, but just TikTok it or something, or watch it, lead-based paint. Why did it stop? And you'll see the videos. They could probably explain it more eloquently than I have. If you're selling a home that's energy efficient, you have to disclose this. Why? Because selling energy efficient homes qualify for special loans. And you got to know beforehand to be proactive and take advantage of it. Imagine if you found out after the fact and you're like, oh my gosh, miss out on this opportunity. Well, who's responsible? Whoever sold it to you. Homeowners Association disclosure, one of the most important disclosures. To know who they are, how to get in touch with them, all the rules, how much you pay them, how often you pay them. All of this is important and relevant to make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to buy it or you can afford it. So what happens if you receive it after the fact and you're like, oh my gosh, $600 a month for the HOA? Like, do I get a butler? Like, what's going on? And it could be a deal breaker for you. So that's why you need to know HOA, what they charge and rules and so forth prior to signing the sale contract. This is the rule. And if you can prove you didn't get that disclosure before you sign the sale contract, as a buyer, you have a right to cancel the deal all the way up until the closing date with no penalty because of the negligence of not presenting it to you. We'll see details of it on the next page right below that figure, line 7 through 15. It says buyer should not sign the sale contract until they go over the homeowner's disclosure summary. And it says right here, it says they have the right to cancel, terminate all the way to the closing date. Wow. The end of line 14 continues on line 15. Yep. Property tax disclosure. Here's the thing. You can present facts. In public records, the property tax bill is posted. I can see, if you're a homeowner, how much you pay in property taxes. It's not hidden. Even celebrities own house, you can see how much they pay in property taxes. It's public information. But don't try to speculate on what they're going to pay next year if they buy that house. Because the current owner might be paying a lot less because of some exemptions that they qualify for. Do you remember homesteading qualifies you for some exemptions? What about if they're military or they're blind or they're a widow and all these things that could add up and they could be saving a whole lot of money? That used to be, not anymore. Over 70 something years old, but not anymore.
I have a question.
So yeah, question.
For the homeowners association, if
Yes.
the owner does not pay that, what can happen?
Then they can lose their property. HOA can foreclose on your home.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's one of the auctions I go to. It's true. So once again, don't speculate. You're not a psychic. You don't know what they're going to pay next year in property taxes. You're not qualified to do so. And you don't determine what property taxes are. The county determines. So don't get involved in that and take on the liability. And also, if you homestead your property, your next year's property taxes cannot go up more than 3%. So imagine somebody bought the property 10 years ago. They were locked in 10 years ago. Property taxes only went up incrementally every single year, but they should be paying a whole lot more right now. Then you buy their property. You're the new owner. You pay whatever property taxes are as a new owner. You don't get that locked in rate. Building codes. Can you sell a house with a code violation? Yeah, you can. You can. Look, the statute does not require that the seller clear the violation prior to closing. But what do you need to know?
Financing will make that.
Yeah, of course. If you get financing, if you get a loan to purchase, the lender's going to say, there's a code violation, it's got to get cleared up. This is what was revealed in the title search. You got to clear it up prior to closing or at the closing. You could do it. But the lender's not going to give financing for a property that has this type of lien attached to it. Code violation lien. Anyhow, but you could buy it cash and assume that issue. The seller must forward to the code enforcement agency name and address of the new owner with a copy of the disclosures given to the buyer within how many days? 5 days of title transfer. You're going to see that for your homework tonight. Have you ever heard of a CDD? Community Development District? This is interesting. Okay. So a developer wants to construct 500 houses. There's a huge expense that goes into constructing 500 homes in a particular area, whatever county or city. They're called impact fees. Have you ever heard of impact fees? So if you want to build houses, what do houses consume? What? I was looking for water, electricity, and they also expel sewer water and water that needs to get processed. So the local utilities can only handle a certain amount of homes within their area. And if you want to build 500 homes, you might have to pay to increase that infrastructure. And it could be very expensive. Our current grid, our electrical grid, only can handle the amount of houses we have right now. You want to add 500 more, you have to pay to upgrade our electrical grid. It's what developers go through. But the developer, maybe that's astronomically very expensive. They don't want to pay for it. So how do they offset that cost so the developer doesn't have to pay for it? They charge every homeowner that chooses to live in that community that they're creating. They charge them instead of the developer paying it. And that's called a CDD. So to pay for that infrastructure. And also, what else serves the area? Schools, fire, police, they only serve a certain radius. So what if you have to construct new police departments, new firehouses, and so forth? That's taxpayer money, and the county, the homeowners in the county don't want to pay for this developer to build 500 homes. And the developer doesn't want to pay it. So what do? They charge every homeowner that chooses to live in the community. It's added onto your property tax bill as an additional charge, and it's called the CDD. But it doesn't last forever. It just lasts long enough to offset that cost. So maybe for the next 25 years or so. Yes.
It's like you're there.
Yeah.
That's like upgrade, like for upgrade taxes, so we compensate for it in the matter of.
That's very interesting. And now with AI in SimCity and all that stuff, it kind of makes you wonder if we're actually living in a simulation ourselves. Creator, you're the creator in that circumstance. Misrepresentation and fraud. So let's talk about this. There's a subtle difference between misrepresentation and fraud. We're going to learn about this. Misrepresentation means you didn't necessarily lie, you twisted the what? Yes. And unfortunately, we all know how to do it. Or leave something out to make it completely truthful. You told your significant other you're going out with the fellas to watch the game. You come back a little bit later than usual. She goes through your stuff. This never happened to me, by the way. And finds out you were maybe at a location watching the game that maybe she doesn't approve of. And she's furious. Okay? Well, you lied to me. I can't believe you were sick. You told me you. I didn't lie to you. I told you I was going to a bar to watch the game. I just didn't tell you what kind of bar it was. I didn't lie to you. That's misrepresentation, okay? And it never happened to me. Exactly. Lie by omission, 100%. And that's why this is also known as concealment for that same reason. Okay. In real estate, what's an example of this? Most common example is this. Look on line 15. When you exaggerate, you make the property sound a lot better than it actually is. That could result in charges of misrepresentation, but you see agents doing it all the time. Beautiful, cozy house. This is the tiniest little house ever. Tucked away in a wooded area. Is back of the woods. Nobody lives there. You could probably get murdered. Best view in the entire community, right? How do you know it's the best? It's your opinion. You know, it's like you can't use these phrases and ethically do it. Yes.
That happened to me. It's like a bad area, and he's like, "Oh no, you go straight down here, and it's great." And I drove by at night, and it was even more terrible going that way. He told us that it was great, and I didn't work with it.
Yeah. So it's tough. And obviously you don't want to get caught with this. Could jeopardize your license, open you up to liability, legal liability. So misrepresentation, as we can see, misstatement of fact or omission or concealment of a material matter, a factual matter. Misrepresentation could lead to fraud. What is fraud? Fraud is straight out what? Lying. And to prove that a licensee lied, you must establish any one of these four things. Number one, you have to prove that the licensee lied. Okay. Number one, that could be easy or difficult depending on the circumstance. Number two, you have to prove that the licensee knew it was a lie when they said it. Is that easier or harder to prove? Way harder. Good luck with that one. Number three, you have to prove that you relied on the information. That's easy. You just say, I trusted it to be true to make this decision. And lastly, you cause financial loss because of your lie. And this is the most important in my opinion, because if there's no loss, if nobody lost any money, it's not fraud. No loss, no fraud. You have to prove some type of financial loss in order to establish that somebody committed fraud. Are you with me on that? This is the rule. Okay. Let's move on. We're almost done with this unit. Last thing that I want to show you is fraudulent activity, which is like quasi-fraud or quasi-fraud. It smells like fraud. It's the aroma of fraud, but it's not quite there yet. What are activities in our business that are classified as quasi-fraud? Well, the first one is something we're actually going to talk about more so in Unit 12. You have to disclose when you're selling a property under a blanket debt, a debt that covers multiple properties, essentially. We'll come back to that. If you don't, it's fraudulent. Number two, telling somebody if you don't like it once you buy, come find me, I'll buy it back from you. Don't do that BS. And lastly, no tricks, no games, no schemes, no raffles, no puzzles to win real estate. You can't host a raffle in your front yard and say raffle tickets are $500. If your name is picked at the end of the month, you win my property free and clear. It sounds like a great idea, but you can't do it. Not here in Florida, at least. And it's just because we don't regulate for it in the state of Florida, so it's just unacceptable. And you might make more money off of raffle tickets than what the property is actually what? Worth. So unethical. Sure. In Haiti? Dubai?
Like we knew a bunch of people that won cars. Yeah, like you just buy.
Wow.
Yeah, really luxury. Yeah, luxurious car, or it could be a home, it could be whatever, and of course they would be.
But that would be viewed as haram.
That's how they get. That's how they get away with gambling, because they're not gambling. You're not buying the bottle. Types of like.
But it is. It's a raffle. It's a game of chance. Interesting. Well, yeah. You know, Italy has got something going on right now. They're trying to, so they've experienced such a population decrease. Nobody's having babies over there. And a lot of people are moving out of Italy. And so what they're doing to lure Americans and people from other countries, they're saying, give us, you know, €1 and you, or €1,000 or whatever the case may be. And you get like this beautiful Tuscan old, you know, hundreds of year old house, but it's in a village where nobody lives. There's no civilization. And you got to live there for at least a certain amount of years too, which is a thing as well. And also Japan too. Japan is doing that. Question. Yes, like €10,000 or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen those. I watch those videos on YouTube and so forth. It's very interesting and it's a cool idea. I'm never going to do it, but maybe if it's like in Santorini or Mykonos or something like that, but they're not experiencing any type of growth shortage. Wait, Mykonos is in Greece. What am I talking about? Santorini is in Greece as well, right?
Santorini, that's one of the word, that's the Greek Isles.
I got Greek on my mind, obviously. Capri. That's Italy. Okay. Anyhow, well, is it like Sicily? Like Sicily, that's where a lot of those. It'll be cool. It's a great idea, but I'm never gonna do it. Figure out a way to scam the system. No, I'm just kidding. Get a free Tuscan village out of it. All right. I mean, if you just sell the whole village, then, you know, some billionaire is going to buy it and they're going to put resorts and stuff, and that will stimulate the economy and, you know, really trendy, old style resort, spa, getaway, ayahuasca treatment. I don't know. Nobody knows about ayahuasca. All right. Anyhow. All right. We still got time. Let's move on. We're done with Unit 11. So let's move on to Unit 12, which is an introduction of financing. Introduction of financing. Do you remember on the first day of class, we talked about sales being the lifeblood of real estate brokerage, the real estate business? And then we continued by saying financing is the lifeblood of sales because 90% of buyers finance the purchase or acquisition of real property. For that reason, no financing, no sales, no real estate. Financing is a big part of our business. We got to pay attention and be aware of this. It's very important. Starting with loan instruments that you have to know about. You have to know about these. What are the two loan instruments? The mortgage and the what? And they go hand in hand with one another. You can't have one without the other, guys. They go hand in hand. Let's go through each one. Most people have a misconception of what a mortgage is. Most people think that the mortgage is the money you're getting from the bank to purchase. That's not the mortgage. I hate to break it to you. Let me give you the truth. The mortgage is the legal documents you sign as the borrower that pledges the property as what? Which means what? Collateral for the debt. So it's the legal documents you sign specifically used to pledge the property as collateral security for the debt. It's what makes it a secured loan. It collateralizes the loan. Have you heard of secured loans and unsecured loans? What's an unsecured loan? Yeah, there's no collateral. It's based on your qualifications and that's it. You're giving your personal guarantee. So they go after you legally and hold you accountable. But give me an example of a secured loan. What about a car loan, right? Even a car loan, auto loan is a secured loan. If you stop paying, what do they take? They repossess the car. So that's the collateral. Same thing for real estate. Same thing what we're talking about in front of us. And that's what you sign in the mortgage. It's not the money. Unless I say mortgage loan, that's the money. But if we're just saying the mortgage, now you know what it is. The term used to describe pledging of your property as collateral is what starts with the H. Hypothecation. Hypothecate means to pledge. And there's two parties to a mortgage you have to be aware of. The mortgagor and the mortgagee. Yes. Who's the mortgagor, the borrower or the lender? That's the misconception creeping up once again. Because you're thinking about the money. You're thinking about who's giving the money. Because you know or means they're giving something, right? And you're probably thinking, okay, who's giving the money? Oh, it's the lender, so they got to be the mortgagor. Remember, we're not talking about the money. We're talking about pledging of property as collateral. Who's pledging? The lender or the borrower? The borrower is pledging, hey, I'm giving you this property as collateral. If I stop paying, you can take the what? You can take the property, you can take the house. Whatever the collateral is. So the mortgagor is the one that's giving the pledge, and that's why it's the borrower. It's the
And
owner,
Michael-
prospective owner that needs to borrow money. Yes, question.
Are you still sharing your screen? Because I can't see it.
Oh, sorry about that. So we talked about loan instrument. We talked about the TUNE loan documents, line 9. Talked about what a mortgage is. The term used to describe the pledging, hypothecation, line 15. Thank you for letting me know. On line 21, we talked about the two parties, mortgagor and mortgagee, and that's where we left off, right? So the mortgagee is a lender. And they give you this nice depiction of who's giving, who's receiving, right? But I have a simple way to help you guys remember. The mortgagor is the borrower who's always poor. And the mortgagee has the money. You get it? Mortgagor is the borrower who's always poor, and the mortgagee has the money. This will help you remember the difference between the two. I try. Go to page 277. We see promissory note. So once again, the mortgage and the promissory note go hand in hand with one another. You can't have one without the other. We talked about the promissory note briefly in a previous unit. Do you remember? For my tenants, if they can't come up with a full month's worth of rent, I give them a one-time exception. I tell them, hey, listen, I'll accept partial payment, but you have to sign a promissory note for the remaining balance. So what is the promissory note? A note is a legal document that serves as evidence of a what? And you can legally enforce that in the court of law. So you can hold them legally accountable for that debt obligation. You know what an IOU is? I owe you some money, right? It's like you write on a piece of paper, I owe you $500, and there you go. But this is a legally binding document, promissory note, and it's notarized. Anyhow, you'll see right here what I've been preaching to you. Line 11 and 12. Promissory note, simply the note, must accompany all mortgages in Florida. And the note not only makes us financially, legally responsible to repay a debt, it also breaks down the details of the debt that we promise to repay. Promissory note. Like what? The details of the debt: amount, interest rate, repayment method, term, time period to repay, and what happens if you don't pay, the penalty, which we'll see at the end of this unit. If you go to the next page, at the bottom, line 32, what do we see? Line 32. Self-explanatory. Satisfaction of mortgage. What they're describing is essentially satisfaction of the debt obligation. And it requires the lender to take certain action on your behalf once you satisfy. You'll see right here. It must be recorded that your mortgage is released and must be done within how many days? Yeah. And what is to be removed from that property? Look on line 38, the mortgage lien. Do you remember the mortgage lien? It's a voluntary lien. You allow the lender to place it until you satisfy the debt. So it's just, it all connects. Go to page 279. Let's learn about something new pertaining to mortgage law specifically. Depending on what state you live in, your state could subscribe to either one of these theories. Most states, including Florida, are a lien theory state. What does that mean? Lien theory state. 100%. Okay, so you remember this from taking class or maybe even your exam when you studied beforehand. This is important, something you could be tested on. Florida is a lien theory state, which means this. It means you get to hold on to the deed, have the deed recorded into your name as the borrower, even though you still have a debt obligation against the property. But in exchange, you allow the lender to place what against your property until the debt is satisfied? A mortgage lien. Hence the name, lien theory state. So the deed is recorded into our name, into public records, even though we still have a debt obligation to repay. In other states, there's very few states that subscribe to title theory. It's the opposite. Who holds on to the deed now? The borrower or the lender? No. In a title theory, Florida's a lien theory state. We get the deed recorded into our name, even though we still have a loan out against the property. But a lien is attached. That's why it's a lien theory state. Other states, very few states that subscribe to title theory, who holds on to the deed now? The lender, until you satisfy the debt. Once you satisfy, then they sign the deed over to you recorded in the public records. But not until then. So you can imagine if you live in a title theory state, it's much easier for the lender to recoup, get their property back if you stop paying. They basically just evict you because they already have the deed in their name. They don't give you that deed, sign it over to you until you satisfy the debt. But there is something in Florida that you could utilize, and I've done this, as the owner of the property, acting as lender. So I'll offer seller financing. And one way that I could structure the deal is called a contract for deed, which is the same thing as a title theory state. So I can say, hey, listen, I'm going to finance it for you. Instead of you going to a lender, you give me the down payment, you pay me the interest with each monthly mortgage loan payment. All of this, these terms are negotiable, but I'm going to hold on to the deed until you satisfy the debt with me, just like in a title theory state. That's called a contract for deed. We'll see it in just a moment. Yes.
So, is that what you do? If you
I do not do 30 years. It's like a modified contract for deed. It's like a balloon mortgage and a contract for deed combined. So what I'll do is I'll hold on to the deed until you satisfy the debt, but I'll also I'll stretch the loan term over 30 years so that way your monthly mortgage loan payment is low. But at year number 3 or year number 5, we call it a maturity date, you have to pay me the remaining balance. That's called creative financing. So I've done so many deals. I've taken advantage of these deals myself because there's a property I really want to go after, but I can't. I'm self-employed. It's very hard for me to qualify for financing because I like to play the game where I want to write off as many tax deductions as possible. So that means I show less income on my tax returns. And then when I show the lender my tax returns, they say, oh, you don't make any income. Yeah, I do. But I'm a business, so I can write all of my expenses off. So it shows I don't make any income, but in reality, I do.
die, what happens to the person that that's supposed to pay you?
If-
That you have a contract with?
Oh, if I died as the lender, yeah, just my legal heirs would assume collecting those payments. Whatever my arrangements are prior to my passing. What? For your property? For you to be the lender?
My boss is like, I'll pay cash for your house and you can just pay me for it. I'm like, no, I'll just do.
That's one way you could do it. It's private lending right there.
His family could just take the house after I've been paying.
No, you still have a legal document in place that says you have for X amount of time to pay it off, whatever terms exist. So yeah. And his legal heirs would assume being the bank, right? Question? Yes, hi. You can take it, yeah, that's fine. Did you highlight this class exam question? All right. I'm going to skip over. If you go to the next page, page 281, What I skipped over is summarized for us in the shaded box. Let's go through each one of these. Important mortgage provisions, mortgage clauses, stipulations that you should be familiar with. The first one you're probably not going to like, but that's the one you're tested on. Acceleration. If this stipulation exists within your mortgage, it says, if you stop paying, they can accelerate the due date to pay it all off. So it basically means that it's usually after 90 days of non-payment. They say, okay, 90 days of non-payment, we want the remaining balance right now. They're accelerating for you to pay it all off. And it might go hand in hand with this clause right here. It's called the what? Right to reinstate, which allows you to pay a penalty to get back on track. So if you stop paying and they said, we want the remaining balance, acceleration clause, this clause would allow you to get back on track, pay some type of penalty. The defeasance clause, I like to call it the defeating clause because you're defeating your debt. And if you defeat your debt in a title theory state, which Florida is not a title theory state, but if you do pay off your debt in a title theory state, what must the lender do? Transfer legal what? Title to you. Sign the deed over to you. In Florida, if you pay off your debt, what must the lender do? Release the mortgage lien, right? Exactly. You're defeating your debt, and it requires the lender to do certain things on your behalf. That's what this clause means, this provision, this stipulation. Due on sale clause, add this to it so you can better understand what it means. Debt to lender is. It will make more sense if you write that before it. If you read it all out, it will make sense. Debt to lender is due on sale. What does that mean? The debt to the lender is due on sale. That means when you try to sell it, transfer title, convey title, alienate yourself from ownership, the loan is due and what? Payable. So if you try to transfer ownership while you have the debt with whatever lender, with this clause, the lender says, oh, you try to transfer ownership, change ownership, we want the remaining balance of whatever you owe us right now. So sometimes, and you've learned about this, I'm sure, with your creative financing and learn about wholesaling, if they haven't taught you this, sometimes, have you heard of subject to? Okay. So they might do subject to not trigger the due on sale clause, but we'll talk about due on sale a little bit more, and then also subject to an existing mortgage in just a moment. Prepayment is a good thing. You could pay off as early as you like, unless you have a what clause? Yeah, that means if you try to pay it off early, you get penalized. Why would the lender impose a prepayment penalty? You're gonna be exactly. They don't want to lose all that wonderful interest, right? Mortgage features is what we'll see when we come back. Take a quick 10-minute break, a little bit more than 10 minutes. Be back at 7:25. 7:25.
In an era where online education often falls short, there's an oasis transforming the digital learning landscape. Welcome to Cameron Academy. With our AI-powered platform, we're not just changing the game, we're rewriting the rules. At Cameron Academy, we're not just elevating education, we're lifting learners to new heights. Our comprehensive video lessons and AI tutors simplify complex real estate concepts. At Cameron Academy, we do more than prepare you for your exams. We equip you with the essential knowledge for a successful career in real estate. Break away from the traditional. Think computerized exams. A convenient study app at your fingertips and AI support, but wait, that's not all. Live chat support when you need it, AI-driven text-to-speech content, your own personal AI tutor, and instant online certifications. This isn't just education. This is the future. We're reimagining what it means to ascend to success in the real estate industry. Choose Cameron Academy, the oasis of innovative learning. Your journey to success starts here.
Let's get back to Unit 12. We're on page is this? 281. On page 281, line 6, we see mortgage features. We're going to go through these features together, starting with what on line 7? Down payment. Most lenders require a minimum cash investment from the borrower that's called a down payment. It's usually dependent on your qualifications. Also, they use your qualifications to determine the loan to value ratio. Have you ever heard of this before? Loan to value ratio? It's the percentage of the purchase price that the lender is willing to finance. And most borrowers want the lender to finance as much as the purchase price as possible. They want the lender to give a 99% LTV. That means the borrower only has to come out of pocket for 1%. Does that make sense? So now you understand what an LTV. It's the percentage of the purchase price that the lender is willing to finance. We're going to come back to this and see some math behind it, but have you heard of equity? You know what equity is, right? Equity is the difference between what it's worth, current market value, subtracting what you owe, your mortgage loan debt, and then you get equity. So if it's worth $500,000, but you owe 200, what's your equity? 300,000. Now, some people choose to pull out this money in a large lump sum of cash. That's called a home equity line, home equity loan, or they might tap into a home equity line of credit. Have you ever heard of that before? A HELOC. We'll talk about that as well. Go to page 282. The whole purpose of the lender giving you financing is so they can make what off of you? It's based on your qualifications, of course. Whoever is collecting your mortgage loan payment, guess what? They're servicing the loan. Whoever is collecting your mortgage loan payment is servicing the loan. Now, Christine and I, we had a discussion before class started. She mentioned she worked for Wells Fargo. Did you mind that I shared that? Okay. And Wells Fargo, they might originate the loan, but they might not be servicing the loan, collecting mortgage loan payments. They might be using a third-party company to collect the mortgage loan payments. And these companies charge these big banks 1%, 2%, whatever the case may be, or it's a fraction of a percent, to provide the service of collecting payments from borrowers, record keeping, notifications if they're not paying, and following up on borrowers and so forth. And let's talk about that total payment that you make every single month as a borrower. Most lenders will charge you something called the PITI. You know what PITI stands for? It's an acronym. It stands for principal, interest, taxes, and what? Insurance. Your monthly mortgage loan payment consists of at least 2 parts, principal and interest. But also, if the lender does not have faith that you're going to make your property tax payment on time, or that you're going to renew your homeowner's insurance, which they require for you to have coverage, they will charge you a little bit every single month. They'll basically estimate what it's going to cost you on an annual basis, and they'll break it down into monthly payments, and they'll say, you got to pay us these amounts towards taxes and insurance every single month, and we'll put it in an escrow account for you. When your property tax bill becomes due, we as the lender will pay for it on your behalf to make sure it gets paid through that escrow account that you've been paying towards every single month. Do you understand how it works? Now, I opt out to not escrow taxes and insurance. But some people, even though they don't have to, gosh, that was a tongue twister, even though they don't have to make those payments, they choose to because it's peace of mind. Every single month, they're making those payments towards taxes and insurance. And then when the time comes for them to pay this big premium or a big tax bill, they have peace of mind knowing that it's already taken care of. They've been contributing towards it every single month. Are you with me on that? Okay. So they call that an impound account, by the way, and you'll see this for your homework tonight. Escrow account, impound account for taxes and insurance. Have you heard of lenders charging discount points? Lenders points, loan origination fees, lenders charges. Have you heard of that before? Lenders typically charge points to make more of an income for themselves because lenders nowadays, they're in the game of originating loans more so than holding on to your debt and making all of that wonderful interest off of you. Lenders would most likely prefer, and I think I mentioned this earlier in class, didn't I? I said lenders would most likely, they would love to make 20, 30 grand off of you just for giving you the loan. That 30 grand they made off of you has nothing to do with that $300,000 loan. They pocket that. It's just what they made off of you for doing business with them. You want to do business with me? This is what it costs to do business with me, 30 grand, and I'll give you the $300,000 loan. Are you with me on that? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. And then they sell that $300,000 loan. I mentioned this. They don't hold on to your debt. They sell off your debt. So they get reimbursed that $300,000 and have that 30 grand in their pocket. And then they use that same $300,000 to give somebody else a loan. And they repeat this process. And the way they make money off of you, one of the ways is through points. But they disguise it. They say they're discount points. We're going to charge you X amount of interest based on your qualifications, but you can pay down that rate. You can buy down that rate through these discounting points. And I'm going to show you how it works. I'll show you the math behind it, and you're going to be sick after you see it. Not because the math is difficult. The math is very easy. It's just when you see the true intentions of lending institutions nowadays, they don't care squat about you. Okay? It's to maximize profits, as much money as they can make off of you as a borrower. Doesn't matter if you've been banking with them for 30 years. They don't care. And I'll explain why they don't care as we go through this information. Loan origination fee is one way they can make money off of you too. And you were making money off of this by being a loan officer, right? Yeah, 1-2% of the loan. And I mentioned you should explore getting the mortgage loan originator's license. It's only a 22-hour class. You can do that in a flipping weekend. And most of what you learn in this class is what you need to know to pass that exam. You have both licenses, active licenses. You can make a percentage off the loan and a percentage off the purchase price on the same transaction. How amazing is that? I want you to maximize on these transactions. And of course, I'm sure you want the same for yourself. Go to the next page, page 283. We see LTV again. I'm going to show you the math behind this. The math is simple because the name gives it away. Loan to value ratio. Loan divided by value equals this ratio, this percentage. You'll see it in the shaded box. I even made a handout for you guys. I provided you with the handout. Take that handout, set it in front of you, and let's go through it together, including this example you're going to be tested on. And 100, we made it, finally. All right, let's make it up. Let's say the loan is $300,000. And the purchase price is $375,000. What's the loan to value ratio? All you have to do is divide. Take the loan divided by the purchase price or value, loan to value ratio, and what do you get? Do the math. Take 300 divided by 375 and tell me what you get. Exactly. 300 divided by 375. You don't have to include all of those zeros when you're multiplying, dividing. You still get the same result, and you get 0.8. 0.8, which is what as a percentage? It's 80%, guys. Remember, it's a ratio, a percentage. It's always expressed as a percentage. So what is that telling us? This simple math that we just did. If you look up here, I'll explain it. It's telling us that the loan is 80% of the what? Purchase price or value. That's it. That's telling you that the lender financed 80% and you had to come out of pocket. How much percent is a down payment? 20%. How much money was that 20%? Look at these two figures. Tell me the difference. Yeah. You had to come out of pocket. The 20% is $75,000, obviously, based on this dollar figure. So that's all it's telling us. It's just identifying certain things within financing that the lender is providing. So it's confirmed for us once again. LTV represents the percentage of the purchase price that the lender is willing to finance. There's an alternative LTV formula. And the only reason you're going to have to use this alternative is if they want you to work backwards to get the answer. And what I'm going to show you is basic algebra. Basic algebra. This is the hardest your math calculations are going to get for your exam. If you're comfortable with this algebra, I'm going to show you working backwards to get the answer. You're going to have an easier time on your state exam. So let me show you how it works. I just rearranged some information and I place it in a particular order. Have you heard of the ABC formula? It's like the Pythagorean theorem. Have you heard of this before? A squared times B squared equals C squared. Have you heard of that? Or A times B equals C? And your teacher said, when you remember from school, when you first started learning about this stuff, they said, if you know at least two of those variables, you can calculate the missing variable every single time without fail. And I'm going to show you how consistent it is. For instance, if I said the LTV is 80% and the loan amount is 300, we're using the same figures. We already know what the purchase price is because we used those same figures in the previous example. But what's the correct way to figure it out? Just like our teacher said, if we know at least two of those figures, we can calculate the missing every single time without fail. In this case, we're calculating the what? Purchase price. So what's our first step when using the ABC formula, basic algebra? Our first step, keyword starts with an I, we're going to isolate our missing variable. In this case, what are we looking for? What are we missing? Purchase price. We have to isolate it by itself on one side of the equation. Can you remember from school what mathematical symbol separates the equation from the left to the right side? What symbol does that? The equal symbol. Yeah, look up here. This is the left side of the equation, and this is the right side of the equation, because what symbol separates the equation? The equal symbol. And what side of the equation is the purchase price on? It's on the left side, and we're trying to isolate it. So what must we get rid of? The 80%, the LTV. How do we get rid of it? Your teacher said you divide it by the same number to cancel it out on that one side. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the what? Other. So all you have to do is memorize a rhyme to help you save some time, and that's not it. Here it is. All you need to do, and this works every single time, simply slide and divide. It works every single time. And you divide it by 80% or 0.8, same difference, and do the math. Take 300,000 and divide it by 0.8, 80%, and what do you get? What a coincidence. The purchase price is $375,000. Yes, there are shortcuts that you might remember from school. Great. Use them. But for those of us who can't remember, because it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years since we've been in school, I get that as well. And that's what this time is for. It's a refresher. Any questions here? This is the hardest your math is going to get. This basic algebra. I'm telling you right now, we're going to see more math later on in this week. Any questions? All right. Now let's talk about discount points. Discount point calculations. I want you to highlight this in your textbook. Lines 22 through 25, including the shaded box. I made a handout for this, by the way. And that's one of the handouts I provided to you. Okay, and then on the next page, you're going to highlight something, class exam question, 2 of them. Lock it in. Part of the same thing I'm going to reveal to you. Okay, turn to your handout. Mortgage discounting and point calculations. In your textbook, this is the second calculation you just highlighted with those 2 class exam questions. I'm going to show you this first because it will make more sense if I provide instruction in this order. So the first thing that we encounter here is lender's yield by points. Lender's yield by points. What does that mean? Every point will increase the lender's yield interest. That's how they make money off of you. Yield is profit. They make profit through interest by 1/8%. So just because a lender wants to, they charge you these points. It's to generate more income off of you. So once again, if they charge you a certain amount of points, each point will increase your interest, whatever your true interest is, by how much more? 1/8%. I'll give you an idea of this. What if the lender is charging you 4 points? How would you convert that to see how much more interest you're going to pay? What if your true interest rate is 5%, right? 5%, but then they're charging you these 4 points. Let's convert those points. Each point is equal to 1/8% or 0.125%. So all you have to do is multiply. Go ahead and do that. 4 times 0.125. And that means your true interest rate is going to be increased by what? By 0.5%. Isn't that 0.5%? Isn't that 0.5%? So now they approach you and say, hey, listen, based on your qualifications and we charge points, we're willing to give you a rate of 5.5%. You're thinking, man, that's a little bit high. I have a friend, they have damn near the same qualifications as me, probably worse. I probably have better qualifications. And they got around almost 5%. So why shouldn't I get around 5% right now? Well, it's because they're charging you these points. So you might not like that. And you might fight back and say, well, I don't want to pay these points. If they reveal it in a way where you can actually understand what points are and how they're imposing them against you. What they do is they present 5.5% and you're like, I don't like it. And they say, oh, don't worry, you can actually buy down your rate. And that's through these discounting points, mortgage discounting through points. They say for every point that you want to remove, it's going to cost you 1% of the loan. Isn't that a joke? So it's either they get their money or they get their money. No, you don't want to pay the points at all. You don't want to pay them up front. That's what they're trying to get you guys to do. So they say, okay, rather than paying 0.5% more throughout this 30-year loan term, pay us up front so we remove these points and we'll give you that 5% that you really qualify for. No, just give me the 5% is what I'm saying. It's a game. It's all a game they're playing. And what you find out, the most power you have comes through shopping. And what you might not know is a lot of people get scared about shopping around and trying to get submitting a loan application with multiple lenders because they're thinking, okay, my credit score is going to get dinged every single time. Every time I pull my credit, that's a hard inquiry. Yes, for the first hard inquiry. Then you have 30 days to shop around and get the best rate and terms that you can. And what you'll find out when you shop around is you'll find a lender that's willing to give you that 5% and won't charge you the points because they want to be competitive with one another. Oh no, I got to go to whoever I have a bank account with because I have history with them. They don't care about that. I'm going to tell you, oh, thank you for your loyalty. That's what they'll tell you. But that's about it. You think they're going to give you the most favorable terms and so forth. No. And what you'll find out is most of the time they give you the worst terms. The reason why is because when they pull your credit, they can look at your credit report and see every lender that's pulled your credit prior to them. If they, psychologically speaking, this is in the world of banking. This is not something that they tell the general public, but I'm sharing it with you. They know that most people don't have enough knowledge that they can actually shop around. They think, and this is most people, they think, oh, if I have a bank account with Chase, I got to go to Chase. If I don't have a bank account with another bank, I can't try to get financing there. That's not the case. You can shop around with whatever lending institution you want to. You don't have to have a bank account there. You don't have to have any history with them. You just have to meet the qualifications. But most people are naive to think, oh, I got to go with my bank, Chase. So you go to Chase, they pull your credit, and they say nobody's pulled it prior to them, and you have all the banking history with them. They're going to hit you with as much as they can because they're thinking psychologically you're not going to shop around because most people are intimidated by that, and they don't know any better. I hate to break it to you, but that's the world that we live in.
Michael,
So-
can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've talked to many credit unions and many people, and I hear this
Yes.
statement all the time. But then I always ask them, do you have a reference for this statement when you say that if you pull your credit multiple times, it's not going to ding? I mean, if you put in a request for a loan, it's not going to ding your credit. Where is that information printed? How is that a fact?
It's not in your textbook, but I can tell you just in the world of banking and lending, you get for the credit bureaus. If you pull your credit the first time with whatever lender you want to inquire with, you submit a loan application with them, it is going to affect your credit score by maybe a few points. But you have 30 days from that point to shop around and pull your credit as many times as you wish without affecting your credit score.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And this is going to be confirmed when you do research on it, but take my word for it. Yeah. Well, that's good because most don't. Yeah. When you come across like independent mortgage lenders, mortgage brokerage companies, they'll do more of that. When you go directly with a lending institution, it just feels like you're confused all the time. It feels like there's so much in the dark, but luckily you had a good experience. Costs in dollars by points. So let's see this. Let's see an example of this and how it works. What if the loan, let's use the same loan amount, $300,000. And you want to remove those 4 points that the lender is imposing. 4 points. How do you convert them? Well, each point is equal to 1% of the loan. So if it's 4 points that you want to remove, you have to pay 4% of the loan. So do the math. Go ahead and take 300,000, multiply it by 4%. Tell me what you get. What'd you get? You got $12,000. So the lender's saying, give us $12,000 so we don't charge you these points. But you're thinking, no, I just don't want to pay points. I just want to get what I really qualify for. It's a game. It's all a game. It's the game of money. And some people play the game better than others. And the way to protect yourself is to get this knowledge. This is the type of foundation that you need to build for yourself. I had a really great conversation today with my Rotary Club. I'm part of the Winter Park Rotary Club, and we do a lot of public good. But one of the speakers that we had today was Maria Vasquez, and she is the superintendent for OCPS. And you do? Okay. So she showed up today, and I had a good conversation with Scott as well. Scott, he's the director of communications for OCPS as well. Anyhow, so she told me that newly established curriculum for high schoolers, they require that they take financial literacy in high school. I just feel warm inside hearing that because that was a big thing that was missing. You leave school without learning how to establish credit, what credit actually is, who the credit bureaus are, what are the pillars of building good credit, what type of utilization, how to open up a bank account. You don't learn any of this stuff. I mean, at least the last generation, probably. It used to be where, like, if I were to talk to my mother and she would tell me about her school experience, you leave school learning a trade. You leave school learning at least how to do carpentry, how to weld, how to drive. They don't even do driver's education now in school. So much has been eliminated. What was that? Video games? A steering wheel? I mean, they do make those. Okay. It beats me. That's so odd. You got her learner's permit, right? Oh, okay, got you. But to get the actual driver's license, you got to go to the DMV, parallel park, and all that stuff. So very interesting nowadays how things work. And yeah, I did. I remember doing that as well. This is a long time ago. Over 2 decades ago. Yeah, I was so ready taking that driver's. I was driving illegally without any adults when I was 15. Don't spread that. I was just doing it. If I got caught, who cares? Whatever. I'm a minor. So, but anyhow, yeah, it's like back in the day, you could trust in the school system to kind of like raise your kids because they got a good quality education and so forth. This is not the case anymore. And that's what's been lacking because kids leave school and they take on a tremendous amount of debt. They don't know what debt is. They don't get that conversation from their parents. I mean, who had the conversation from their parents, like how to build credit, how to establish credit, how to all these things? None of that. Lending, nothing. So it's a shame. But it's up to us, especially, if you're eventually going to have kids, to do that for your kids. Let's continue on. Let's go to the next page. I got a little ranty. I apologize. Go to page 285. Assignment of mortgage is just like it sounds. You're assigning your debt to another. There's an assignor and assignee. I think you get the concept of that. The assignee becomes the new owner of the debt and security instrument. Before you take on somebody's debt, you got to know what you're getting into. So you got to verify the loan balance. How do you verify the loan balance? Well, you ask the lender for an estoppel letter, officially the estoppel certificate. It's the loan balance. And you also want to make sure that they're in good standing with the HOA, condo association, or whatever association they're a part of. So same thing. You would contact the condo association, homeowners association, and ask them for an estoppel letter, verifying that they're in good standing. Let's go to the next page, page 286. Methods of purchasing property with an existing mortgage lien. The first, on line 13, we see what? Yeah. That means completely taking over somebody's existing debt. Transferring your debt to another borrower. It is possible, as long as there's not a what clause. We saw it earlier in this unit. A due on sale clause. If the due on sale clause exists, then another borrower can't take over your debt, because the lender says as soon as ownership transfers, you got to pay me whatever is owed. All parties have to sign a separate legal document. Look, on line 20, if the seller wants to be completely free of the financial obligation, all parties would sign the what agreement? Novation agreement. That's to substitute new borrower in place of the original borrower. And look, lenders may want to prevent buyers from assuming, so they would impose what clause? Due on sale clauses right there on line 28. Have you ever heard of subject to an existing mortgage, or just sometimes investors might call it subject to? It's something that caught on recently, and I think this is going to phase out and there's going to be more regulation with it, with how wild it's gone. This guy on social media, I think his name is like Pace Morby or something like that. He's like really popular when it comes to this type of creative deal. So what he does is he goes to a homeowner that's desperate and he says, hey, listen, you have a mortgage loan that you can't afford, but you have 2%, 3% interest. So I want that 2 or 3% interest. So I'll take over your mortgage loan payments. I'll sign a contract that says I'm going to take over your payments, and you're going to sign the deed over to me. And you're probably thinking, what's in it for the investor? The investor, they stick a tenant inside of it, and the tenant is typically going to pay more in rent than what their mortgage loan payment is at 2-3%. So they're playing arbitrage. Now, what happens if the investor stops paying? They just sign the deed back over to the borrower, but then the borrower is right back in the position where they started off at. What's the best case scenario for the borrower that can't afford to pay anymore? Sell the property. Sell the property. It's the best case scenario. But maybe the property is in bad condition. Maybe it needs work before, so it will pass inspection. So maybe that's the way the investor gets in. And they think, oh, I'm providing value. I'm giving them an additional option. I think it's just preying on the weak is what it is. And it's...
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, hold on one second. They call it a buy-in fee or whatever the case may be. It is. I'll give you $10,000. You sign the deed over to me. And I have a contract that I'll sign that says I'll make your mortgage loan payments for you. It's still, most people want their equity. Yeah. How do you get your equity? Well, you sell it. why do you want to be financially tied to this investor? Why do you still want to be responsible for the debt? Because that's what it is on paper. You just have a contract with the investor that they're going to make the mortgage loan payments for you. And the investor can make it sound really attractive to persuade you to take advantage of it. Oh yeah, I'm going to help your credit because I'm going to make those payments every single month on time for you. Their debt to income ratio is still going to be affected because they're still on the hook for the original debt. You know your stuff, and that's just something that you need to consider. But yes, you had a question online?
Yeah, I was just curious. Are those investors, so in the state of Florida, don't you have to be, don't you have a license? Need to have a license to do this? Those investors, do
you
they
don't.
have licenses?
No, you don't. But if I have anything to do with it, I would require all of them to have licenses or at least it be highly regulated because it's just not. And I don't like what's going on in the industry right now with all of these creative finance deals that are just getting a little bit out of control and people are getting taken advantage of. And it should be regulated to a degree where you need a license, in my opinion. The fact that you're doing it without a license means you don't know Florida statutes, laws, regulations, and you could easily make a mistake because of that misunderstanding. But you're still going to suffer the consequences and be punished by law because you're practicing real estate without a real estate license or scamming people or doing something in a way that's not following the correct procedures. So I don't like it. But if you have a real estate license and you're doing it, then maybe it's a little bit better of a situation. Earlier, we talked about a contract for deed. Do you remember this? So we have a contract that once you pay off the debt with me, I'll sign the deed over to you. That's what it means. So I'm going to hold on to the deed until you satisfy. And I think you'll even see that on the next page, if I'm not mistaken. It's on page 287. The seller retains legal title to the property until the debt is repaid. Once repaid, the deed is transferred. Go to page 288. Let's talk about default. You stop paying. If you stop paying, usually after 90 days of non-payment, the lender initiates what legal action against you? Foreclosure. Foreclosure is a judicial process. It's a legal process so that the lender can recoup the collateral. What's the collateral? The property, right? Let's take a step back and let's review what we discussed earlier. You remember the mortgage and the promissory note? The mortgage you sign as a borrower, it pledges the property as collateral for the debt. It collateralizes the loan. It's what makes it a secured loan. And the promissory note is what you sign as a promise to repay the debt, whatever the arrangements are, the terms and conditions, right? Both go hand in hand with one another. So if you stop paying, what does the lender do? Well, until you pay off the debt, what does a lender place against your property? Until you pay off the debt with the lender, what did the lender place against your property? A mortgage lien. It's a voluntary lien for that reason. So they file a lawsuit to enforce the mortgage lien that's attached to your property. They're enforcing their claim. And when they go to court, they go in front of the judge and they say, here's the mortgage they signed that says if they stop paying, we can take the collateral, in this case, the property. Oh, and here is the promissory note. This is states that they promise to pay X amount of dollars over X amount of time, and this is the payment schedule. And this is what happens if they don't pay. And here's evidence that they didn't pay in our communications with them. So they broke their promise, and for that reason, we want to recoup the property. If the judge signs off on it, the lender's going to do one of two things. Most of the time, they'll send it to auction, hosted by the county. It's called the foreclosure sale, foreclosure auction. Have you heard of that before? Hosted by the county. Sometimes the bank will even have representatives that go to the county auction to make sure that they're bidding against other people so the property auctions, it sells for a certain amount. So the lender can recoup at least a certain amount. Kind of increase urgency in the auction. So it's not just one person bidding against another. They have somebody that's on their team. It's very interesting how they play this game. Anyhow,
I have a question.
if they win, they're just reimbursing themselves. If they create this urgency, then they're getting somebody to spend more money than they would normally spend. Yes, question.
Michael, so if the foreclosure auction gets less money than the debt, what
Let me show
happens
you.
then?
Let me show you that. It's a great question. It's here. Let me show you.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're talking about default. We know it's a judicial process. It's called foreclosure. Then initiate a lawsuit on the promissory note. They're enforcing the mortgage lien. We talked about that. Check this out on line 31. There is a right that you have as a borrower to stop the foreclosure action. It's called equity of what? Keyword redemption. You're redeeming yourself. You basically pay some type of penalty fine to get back on track so you don't lose your property. And you can stop foreclosure all the way up to the auction date. Go to page 289. What's the result from foreclosure? Well, your credit is going to be obliterated, right? How long does foreclosure stay on your credit report? Do you know? Stays on for 7 years. And what's the result? Well, I mentioned they'll send it to auction. But what if they sell it at auction for more than what you owe? You owe 200, but they sold it at auction for 300. Yes. Any excess proceeds are to be paid to the what? Who's the mortgagor? Borrower. Who's always? Or what happens, and this is the question online, what happens if it's sold for less at auction than what you owe? The lender could come after you for a deficiency judgment. So you owe 300, but the market has changed. Property is worth a whole lot less. It was sold at auction for 200. It's probably the most that they're going to get. The lender could go back to court and try to get a judgment against you for the remaining balance, the remaining $100,000. If you don't have enough money to keep your property, not lose it from foreclosure, they take it to foreclosure auction. You lost your property. You're out on the street or wherever you are. Your credit is obliterated. Do you think you're going to have an extra $100,000 lying around to pay off this judgment against you? Probably not. So it's probably going to lead to the big B, which is what? Bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy stays on your credit report for how long? 10 years. And you become a pariah with any lender. Good luck trying to get financing. Short sale. Most people have a misconception of what a short sale is. They think it's a quick sale. No, it's not. If it's time, if it's correlated with time, it should be called a long sale because it takes so long to actually get approval from the bank to complete a short sale. Let me explain how it works. You know what shorting stock is? Okay. If you know what short, all right. You're selling it short. I'll explain. You bought the property at the peak of the market. You paid $500,000 for this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but the market has gone down significantly, but now you need to sell it. You're selling the market at its current value, and you know it's not what it once was. So you have to go to the lender and get permission to sell it for less and not be on the hook for the remaining balance. So that's what a short sale is. You're selling it short. You're saying, hey, lender, can I sell it for current market value? And then you forgive me for the balance. If they accept it, they'll allow you to market it as a short sale. You're going to get offers. You have to submit these offers to the lender, and the lender has to approve it to conduct this sale. But it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get any type of approval from the lender for any offer that's submitted. It takes a long time. Should be called a long sale if we're talking about time. Most people think that foreclosure is the end all be all. They think, okay, I'm probably going to lose this property, so I'll just wait until the bank takes it from me. You have an option. Most people are not aware of this option. It's called deed in lieu of foreclosure. It's a little bit of French in there. In lieu. What does in lieu mean? In place of, yeah. So you sign the deed over to the lender instead of them filing what against you? This is before the foreclosure has been initiated. If foreclosure has already started that legal action, it's too late for this. And you're thinking, why? What would be the benefit? Why wouldn't somebody just sell the property? Well, because maybe you don't know any better. I don't know. but selling the property would probably be better. Signing your deed over to the lender, walking away, forfeiting any mortgage loan payments you've made up into that point. That's what this is. So that way they don't file the foreclosure and your credit get affected. Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, there's no such thing as a friendly foreclosure, but that's what they call it. Not so friendly. What if you have a investment property, an income producing property, or rental property that you own that's in foreclosure? Do you think that the lender would find it acceptable for you to continue collecting mortgage loan payments from your tenants without making your mortgage loan payments? Collecting rental payments, but not paying off your debt. The lender is not going to accept this, and they'll do something called, through the receivership clause, and you'll see it on line 37, allows a receiver to be appointed by the lender to collect the income from that property so you don't try to pocket the cash. If you want to find out if a property is in foreclosure or foreclosure has been initiated, this has been recorded in the public records. It's called lis pendens. It's Latin. It means action pending. It's a warning that a lawsuit has been filed against the property specifically utilized for foreclosure. So some real estate agents use this as a lead. They look in public records and see the latest lis pendens that have been filed against properties, and they try to get in contact with those owners to list the property for them. Yes, pre-foreclosure. Any questions here? You can find out the properties that are in foreclosure, but you have to be able to skip trace these numbers, be able to, you'll get the address, and from the address, you can find the owner, and with the owner's name and your address, you might be able to get their phone number using certain softwares and programs, like I have these softwares, and then you call, and hopefully you're speaking with the owner, and you can try to negotiate the business that you want to offer them. Just as long as they're not on the do not. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
We've talked about the law for calling, right? What is the law for just not calling but in person? Is there a law for that, or you can like
Texting is falls under the same law for calling.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Text
so if
message is
there
the same thing as calling.
no, I mean in person.
Oh, in person.
Yes.
Yeah, he's talking about knocking on their door. Go for it.
No, what I mean is,
I might write them a letter. I might knock on their door. I might send them a text message. Might call them.
if they my question is, if they are on the no-call list, does this has anything to do with those other strategies?
No.
No. So I can send letters. I can do anything else.
But there are federal laws that prohibit, you can't stuff anything in their mailbox, because then you're tampering with mailboxes. That's a violation of a federal law. If they have no solicitation allowed, then maybe not. Otherwise, yeah, you could put a letter, stick it in their door, or whatever the case may be, or actually mail them something. You could put a stamp on it and put it in your mailbox, and they'll get it within a day or two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're done with our session for tonight. Push your chairs, clean up your mess, drive safe. God bless. See you. Mañana. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
I woke up at 3 a.m. today. And then I went to train
Oh, okay.
before school, so.
It's a long day for you then. Well, now you know your limitations. Get a good night's rest.
Good one.
Have a great